Okay, so your Chimo greetings. Your Chimo means greetings in the Akan language. I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehambata Akan. Odwirafo of Akwamumaina Maruka. Etifimu, that is the Akwamu nation in North America, within Odwiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani people in the Western Hemisphere. Also the founder of Hoodoo Jasedain, which is the hearth shrine of Akan Ancestral Religion in North America, Hoodoo Religion in North America. So we've been doing some lives lately. We did a question and answer session the other night dealing with Adebisa, which is divination from the Hoodoo perspective, but we also touched on other ancestral religious practices as well and made comparisons. Tonight, this is an important topic because it not only touches ancestral religion, but also our general population, even those who are not involved in ancestral religion, the intersection of spirit possession and mental illness. So I want to get into detail about that. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room at any time. We're gonna, answer questions throughout. So we are working on our second film in our Hoodoo film trilogy. We released the first documentary film, Hoodoo, Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. And that film is right here on the channel, so you can watch it for free. Now, we are working on part 2 of that. And we released the first film back in October 2 years ago. We are working to complete the second part of this trilogy for this October. We have a crowdfund effort. We have to raise some more funds to complete the film by October. We're gonna finish the filming. We've already started the filming. We're gonna finish the filming aspect this month in early September. We have a few more places to travel. This is the crowdfund page. This is the image, and you'll see right here, that is the, on our YouTube page, you can watch the Hoodoo film for free, of course. So that was part 1. 2 years later, which is this October, we want to release part 2. We need your assistance to release part 2. We are aiming to release it at our 11th annual Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. For pre-screening for those who have contributed to the film, whether you come in person to the event or you'll have a private link so you can, watch the pre-screening. So that's going to be October 18th. And our goal is to finish the film and release it during our, Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. So let me place this link as we go along, as we talk, go through this process tonight, answering questions and giving you some information. We're asking that people contribute, and we appreciate those who have contributed last night and today. We're getting closer and closer to our goal. For this month, we're just trying to get 1/3 of our goal, and then the second third of it, we'll try to raise that in September, and the final third at the beginning of October. So we're trying to get to that, in August, the first third of our goal, so we can get some of the equipment we need to complete the process, complete the filming. We need that immediately, so this is why we are having the crowdfund. So you'll see all the details there, and we're going to come back to that a little bit later as well. But that is the page. The link is in the chat room. Let's get back into our topic. Okay, so there are a number of reasons why we wanted to touch on this particular topic: spirit possession and mental illness, hoodoo, and also we'll talk about juju, which is Yoruba tradition in North America. Hoodoo, as we have proven, is the Akan Ancestral Religion, preserved in our blood circles in North America by Akan people who were forced from the regions of Ghana and Ivory Coast hundreds of years ago during the enslavement era. We maintained Akan Ancestral Religion under the Akan word Ndu. So we're going to get into that. So we're going to talk about different traditions, but focus on the Hoodoo tradition. But this notion of spirit possession is important across the board. So there's a fine line between some expressions of spirit communication And then some individuals who are actually suffering from mental illness. Now, some people who are not suffering from mental illness, they can communicate clairvoyantly, clairaudiently, clairsentiently, clairaliently, various expressions of, spirit communication with the ancestral realm and the realm of the Abosom, the deities. But then you have other individuals who are not able to maintain that kind of communication. And some people are not really communicating with them. They're just dealing with repressed, memories and emotions and ideas and formulations and putting that forward falsely as spirit communication. But we want to delineate the differences and go into some detail because what we call Akom, spirit possession, and Nkom, spirit communication, are essential in any practice of ancestral religion because that's direct communication with the forces in nature, spirit possession, they come down and possess and communicate. Also, the deities as well, the Abosom as well. So, first we want to give some definitions. And we published a document. We're going to get into some of this document and expand upon it. Okay, this was a short document we published a while back. Akom and Nkom, spirit possession, spirit communication. So what we say is the key to understanding cosmology. We need direct experience with the forces in nature, the Abosom as they're called in Akan, direct experience with the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. We don't just have a belief system where we read a book full of misinformation like the Bible or Quran or Talmud or Bhagavad Gita or whatever text you're talking about, which is full of plagiarized misinformation, pseudo-religious practice and so forth. And we don't just read something and memorize it and claim to be practicing tradition. We have direct experience with the deities that we talk about. We have direct experience with the ancestral spirits that we talk about, our great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers, and so forth, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. We have direct experience with them. The same with the Abosom, Orisha, Vodou, and so forth, the forces in nature. So, in the language and culture of ancient Kemet, you look at the Ba spirit, that is the divine living energy of the individual. They show it very often as a bird with the head of the human being. Once the spirit, the animating spirit, leaves the body after transitioning, sometimes they will show it as a bird because it's, it's hovering and so forth. So they show it symbolically as a bird, but instead of having the head of the bird, they have the head of the individual whose spirit it is, just to show that this is this person's spirit or animating winged fiery force. So you see the Ba spirit hovering over the body that it once inhabited and so forth. Now, Akom and Akan and Nkom are the two terms that we're focused on. Akom means spirit possession. Nkom means spirit communication. They are comprised of Ka in the tree language of the Akan, which means to go, and Mu means within. So Komu means to go within. Komu is contracted to Kom, meaning to go within. Akom references the going within in the context of a spirit going within or entering the body's spirit possession and moving through the body of the individual. And Nkom means spirit going within in the context of communication with the spirit. If you saw a spirit in the room or heard a spirit communicating and then you communicated back and so forth, then you're engaged in spiritual communication, Nkom. But you also have Akom, which is spirit possession. Now, those who do not communicate with the Abosom, the deities, and the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our blood circles. In Yoruba, those two terms are Orisha and Egungun. In the Ewe language, the same terms are Vodou, the deities, and Kuvito, the ancestral spirits. If you're not engaged in that on some level, then you have no real knowledge of the cosmology. We have a lot of people talking about cosmology, or writing books or, doing lives and doing presentations and writing about linguistics and all kinds of things, but they have no direct experience with the spirit realm. They can't speak from experience. They're operating like white atheists. They're just memorizing some text, not having a full understanding of that, misinforming people about our cosmology and putting themselves forward as experts in our culture and cosmology, which they are not. Misguiding people. One of the reasons we put this article out. Our ancestresses and ancestors of ancient Khanit and Kemet, Nubia and Egypt, fully engaged the process of spirit possession and spirit communication, which is the foundation of ancestral religious practice. One cannot claim to have any real knowledge of the cosmology of ancient Khanit and Kemet or any ancestral cosmology without having an active relationship with the same deities that the people, our people of ancient Khanit and Kemet possessed and communicated with in order to learn the order of creation and replicate that divine order to establish civilization. The major divinities we worship in ancient Khanit and Kemet are the divine spirit forces that animate creation. They're the same across the board, of course. The spirit that animates the sun, if the same sun is shining on us now that was shining on our people tens of thousands of years ago, the same moon is affecting the earth now that was affecting us tens of thousands of years ago, the same earth mother, the same oceans, rivers, atmosphere, magnetosphere surrounding earth, we're impacted by these same features of creation. The spiritual forces that animate the sun, animate the moon, animate the planets, animate the earth mother, the oceans, the mountains, the rivers, the streams, the atmosphere, are the same spirits that have been animating these features of creation for millions of years. They have different names based on dialectical variants in our languages, but we're talking about the same thing. If the Akan people call the sun Oria, and the Yoruba call the sun Orun, we're talking about the same entity. If we call water Nsio and they call water Omi, in the Yoruba language, when we say Nsio and Akan, we're talking about water, the same thing. So we talk about a specific divinity that possesses, that a divinity of the sun and possesses someone, we'll have a different name for it in the different languages, but we're talking about the same entity. Whether we were talking about thousands of years ago or right now, in the Hoodoo tradition in North America. There isn't a different sun or moon or planets or oceans or rivers now that didn't exist back then. So if you look in the Akan dictionary, and this is important because when we say in the Hoodoo tradition, when someone gets possessed, they say the spirit has come or the spirit has come down. Come and calm. In that context, we're really talking about calm, to go within and so forth, the same term in Akan language. So this is from the Akan dictionary. Calm. This was written in the quote unquote 1800s, to dance wildly in a state of frenzy or ecstasy, ascribed by the natives to the agency of a fetish, meaning a divinity, to be possessed with a fetish, meaning a divinity, to perform the actions or practices of a fetish man, meaning a priest or priestess, to prophesy, to soothsay, to foretell, and so forth. Example, he prophesies that it will rain tomorrow, and so forth. As you can see here, calm equals ka mu, to enter, penetrate, to go within. Calm, to bend, bow, incline, turn aside. The reason why calm means to incline, bow, turn aside, and so forth, and also to penetrate. When the spirit comes down, comes, calm, penetrates, goes within, we become heavy with the spirit. And that's one of the definitions of the term undu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. It also means to become heavy. So when the spirit comes down, one becomes heavy with the spirit, and the body bends, bows, inclines, and so forth. Now, that's in the Akan language for calm. Then we compare that to the language of ancient Khanit and Kemet. And what does calm mean in the Medut and Toro and the hieroglyphs? To bend, to bow, to submit, bend away, and so forth. To have influence over someone, to gain the mastery. That is the exact same definition, the exact same word in ancient Kanit and Kemet that we preserved when we migrated from Kemet into the western part of the continent of Afuraka, Kahet, Africa. Continue speaking the same language, using the same terms, denoting the same, connotations and so forth. And then we brought that into North America when the spirit comes and we become heavy with the spirit. Now, you'll also see the term Kema in the older hieroglyphic dictionaries. You'll see this circle, which is the CF, and the little owl, which is the M sound. So it's the Ka and M. And the arm with the open palm, the forearm with the open palm is the A sound. So that's Ka, and A. When the Egyptologists were writing these dictionaries back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, if they didn't know what the vowel placement was, they would arbitrarily insert an E in between consonants. So instead of spelling it KHM, they would put KH and they would stick an E as a placeholder until they could figure out what the vowel placement was. We don't have to figure it out. Instead of KHMA, Kuma, we know it's Kom or Koma because we still speak the language. What does it mean? To grasp, to seize, to lay hold upon, to hold, to possess. So Koma in Akan, in ancient Kemet, you'll see the little symbol here. That is a fist. It's a closed fist like this, meaning to grasp, to seize, to possess. Kom in ancient Kemet, meaning to possess. Kom meaning to possess in Akan. Koma or Kom meaning to bend, bow, incline in ancient Kemet. Kom meaning to bend, bow, incline in Akan. You also have Kom meaning hunger. And we'll look at that. That's like when you have a thirst and you need to pull something into you and so forth. If you have that, if you're depleted, because you haven't eaten in a while and you have that hunger, that magnetism to pull nutrients inside of you, that's like pulling the spirit down. It's a similar kind of energy. So that's why we use the term Kom for hunger as well. You have Akom, the state of being possessed with the fetish. That's the term they use for deity. And it says a temporary madness or ecstasy expressing itself in dancing and wild gestures and ascribed by the natives to the agency of a fetish, meaning a deity, and so forth. One is possessed with a fetish and all of that. Then you have Calm, oracle, communication, revelation, or a message delivered by God or a fetish, meaning a deity, and Abosom, to a prophet, meaning an Akom for a priest or priestess, prophecy, prediction, to prophesy, to foretell. Calm meaning hunger. You also have calm meaning the neck or throat, dealing with hunger, the place that you pull the food in and so forth. Calm also meaning to embrace. And then the related term kau, to fall into an ecstasy, to prophesy during a frenzy. Now you have falling into an ecstasy to prophesy during a frenzy, and you see the image of the male here in that ritual movement and so forth. The same description of ka, which is short for kamu, to fall into an ecstasy, prophesy during a frenzy. And then if you recall in the Akan language, to dance wildly in a state of frenzy or ecstasy, to be possessed with a fetish and so forth. So the same terminology used to define what's taking place when the ka mu happens, when the spirit comes down, as we say in Hoodoo, calm, the spirit comes. The spirit's going to come. That's kamu. We're using an Akan word to describe spirit possession. Now, you notice that they said go back right quick. A temporary madness or ecstasy expressing itself in dancing and wild gestures and so forth. You see someone get possessed and so forth. Sometimes people will say it looks like someone is going mad and so forth or insane. Now, this is very important. We're going to look at a description, and I'm going to share with you personally one of the reasons we picked this topic. So amongst the Asante people, which is a large Akan group, there's a specific, story that they tell just to give people a definition of how spirit possession took place and first came into the knowledge of the people. And I want to touch on that cosmological story. It's a real story, but also cosmological as well. It's very short, but it's important because it intersects these two topics. So in this text, it says, the Asante people, seized in this manner, then underwent an arduous and prolonged training, talking about spirit possession, training for Okomfo, priests or priestesses who become possessed and so forth. Central to this apprenticeship as an Okomfo, or priest or priestess who becomes possessed, central to that apprenticeship was mastery of Akom, a possession dance through which initiates channeled the intercessionary capacities and prophetic authority of the power that has selected them, talking about the Abosom, the divinities. The Asante people explained Akom in terms of an intervention into human affairs over which, importantly, people had no control, and they framed that explanation in remote time in the maxim Se Chumasi Amodaim Ante A Anka Akom Ama. And when someone was explaining this to the person who was writing, someone in the Asante region, they said, whatever might compose Abosom, none can correctly tell. Chumasi was probably a young man. One day, people observed him behaving very much like a madman. He had been possessed by a certain power, but the people with whom he lived did not know what he was becoming, that he was becoming a medium of expression of an entity. After a spell of time, Chumasi's state got normal. Then the people realized that it must be a new state or a condition. Akom was what they were taught by the power of obsession to call Chumasi's state. The Abosom, the deities, gave us the word Akom to reference that spirit possession. So the proverb came about, which is the proverb up here, had Chumasi not gone mad and then normal again, there would not have come Akom or Abosom worship. Now, that's an English translation. Had Chumasi not gone, English they're saying gone mad or quote unquote crazy, but the term is here dime or audaim. Audaim is the term for quote unquote madness or mental illness, but it also means transformation. Dainmu, transformation. Let me show that. We talked a little bit about that in last night's live. We're going to take some questions. If you have any questions, you can post them now in the chat room. I want to take you back to we're going to look in our book, Hoodoo People. But before we get into that, I just want to show you this term so you can see the linguistic connection and the cosmological connection as well. So in our page, Hoodoo Jase Dine, Jase is the hearth and so forth, and Odine is the shrine and sanctuary, so that's the name of our Hoodoo temple and so forth, the Hoodoo Jase Dine. But we were giving some definitions and showing what dying means. So dying can mean to apply to seek the protection of, put oneself under the protection of, in certain ritual contexts, under the protection of a divinity and so forth. But dying to turn, to give another direction, tendency, or inclination. To turn, transform, change into, to become by sudden transformation. Here again, it says Obayifo, which is a quote unquote witch, but it's talking about one who carries the Bayi energy. Obayifo, Dine, Ne, Ho, Osebo. The wizard transforms himself into a leopard, talking about spiritual transformation into a sacred spirit animal totem. But Daim Mu or Daimu or Daim is a contraction in a certain context of D-A-M, Daim, meaning, oh, Daim meaning madness. And let me just, as a matter of fact, I want you to see that entry in the Santi Fanti dictionary, just so you can see, you know, the way it's written and so forth. So you have some primary direct evidence of that. This is a Santi Fanti dictionary I'm going to pull up, was published first back in the, they started working on it in the mid so-called 1800s in the forest belt in Ghana with our people. So, okay, so here, Odaim, meaning madness, to grow, go or grow or run crazy or mad and so forth. So, but in a certain context, when you look linguistically, Daim, meaning to transform, and Mu, meaning within, and Daimu becomes contracted to Daim. And in a certain context, Daim, meaning quote unquote madness, really means a transformation within. And if someone transforms within all of a sudden and they start acting different, moving different and so forth, you have to see what's happening. Someone could have gotten shocked, you know, electric shock, and they start moving frenetically, and you're trying to figure out what happened. Like, oh, they got shocked and they were in pain. Of course they're moving like that. Or someone could be going mentally, you know, discordant and start acting in an erratic fashion. In that context, their movements are based on discordance spiritually. Someone else, because of the agency of a divinity, a disembodied spirit, a divinity or an ancestral spirit gets inside the body of the person, operates through their body, and they're moving differently than they normally would move. Daimu, they have transformed. Daim, move within, and Odaim, they are Odaim, they've transformed from within, but it's not in the context of madness, in the context of transformation. So that's why they said, if Shumasi had not gone Odaim, transformed within, and then come back to normal again, there would not have been Akom or Abosom worship. We watched this person transform, a spirit came over him, and what would happen, the spirit would start speaking in a sacred language, and the people would say, okay, this spirit is speaking differently, or it's an ancient ancestral spirit speaking an archaic version of their ancestral language. Here, when they talk about speaking in tongues, that has nothing to do with the church. That's nonsense. When our ancestresses and ancestors were possessed, they would speak, the ancient ones would speak an archaic version of our ancestral language, including in ancient Kani and Kemet, when the Moatia or the Dang, the quote unquote dwarf spirits or the small statured people, the original people, the Twa people of Earth, the small statured people shorter than 4, 5, 4 feet and so forth. They're the original people of Earth. They have their own click language that mimics the sounds of the forest and so forth. These are the original people. And when some of those ancient spirits will possess and speak that language, they are speaking in tongues. Or if a spirit from a, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 generations back, speaking an archaic version of their ancestral language, or an ancestral spirit who had migrated away and they have a different dialectical variant of the language speak, they're speaking in quote unquote tongues. We know there's a different, entity there, but we can still communicate with them. Now, so that's important. Now, one of the reasons we brought this up, and it's important because we're going to take this down and we're going to bring up our book once again. It's important because some people get involved in ancestral religion. Some people are suffering from mental illness and so forth. Some people are not. Sometimes you have individuals who are, you have individuals who are in psychiatric hospitals simply because they can communicate with ancestral spirits and other people can't see or hear them. So they say, well, these people must be mentally ill, which they are not. There are a lot of people who would have been traditionally priests and priestesses, but they're in mental institutions or on medication or something because their families told them that they were mentally ill. So it is true that sometimes people are misdiagnosed with mental illness because they're really just spirit mediums. They didn't know how to handle that. Nobody in their family or anybody around them, because they were corrupted with Christianity or Islam or something like that, didn't know how to help them handle that. So they either thought there was something wrong with them or they knew it wasn't, but they just couldn't stop the voices and communications from coming. And they would rather try to medicate and blunt that receptivity so they don't have to deal with it. And sometimes those ancestral spirits are wayward and anxious, or sometimes they have spiritually cultivated ones who are assisting them. So sometimes that does take place. But then you have other individuals who have mental illnesses, traumatic brain injuries. They're just reliving or conjuring up old conditionings and acting upon those old conditionings and, triggers and anger and so forth. There are a number of different things that are going on. Now, let me point out in our book, Hoodoo People, this is one of our 31 books that I've published and you can download for free. This is the seminal work that proved that the Hoodoo is the Akan language from the Akan people, specifically the Akwamu dialect. So we started talking about the root is do and plural is ndu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, and plant life, powder, medicine, drug, and so forth. And Asante is nuru, and Akwamu is undu. And undu is the Akwamu dialectical variant, as we showed here. In ancient Kemet, this is undun. It says fat or grease, but it's talking about medicine and so forth. It comes from the undua, undria, the plant life. So the undu, the medicine, comes from the undua, plant life. Edua, edria is singular. With the n, undua or undria is plural. So the hoodoo or udu comes from the undua. And then we show in ancient Kemet how undu also means plant life and so forth. We talked about previously the undun sinfo, undun sini, the native physician, the root doctor, Odwirafo, or Hoodoo, the root worker, and so forth. But as we said, duru, contracted to do, means heavy or weighty, heaviness or weight. So in the Asante dialect, it's unduru. In the Akwamu dialect, it's undu. So undu means medicine from roots, trees, or plant life. Undu also means heavy or weighty, ponderous. And the same word, not uden, but undun, which meant medicine and so forth, and trees and plant life and all that. Undun also means to be heavy or weight. Now, this is also a way we can prove that it's the same, what the proper vocalization is. This is really the little chick right here. The little chick bird right here is the U sound, oo. This little symbol that looks like an upside down bowl is the T sound, also the D sound. And the wavy line is the N sound. So it's really oo and T and N, utun, utun. But we know it's not uten. They stuck an E in there for facilitation of vocalization. It's really UTN. But we know the proper vocalization is udun, udun, to be heavier weight. How do we know that? Because udun means heavier weight. And as you can see here, the do, singular, undu, plural, heavy or weighty. That is undun in ancient Kemet, to be heavier weight. Same word, same meaning. And then when we go back up, we said the plant life, undu, undua, in ancient Kemet, in Akan, udun, not uten, but udun, a kind of tree that's plant life. You see edua, singular, tree, shrub, plural. You see the N right here for plural. Undua, undria, undua, tree, undun, tree. Same word in Akan, same word in ancient Kemet. And then also, of course, do, singular, plural, undu, And then the Asante dialect, nduru, power, medicine, drug, physic. And here, the same word, they spell it U-T-E-N again, but it's really undun. They put question marks because they knew it was some kind of ointment or salve that's contained in a jar, as you see right here. That they said fat or grease, like shea butter, they would call fat. The Europeans would call it fat, and we would use these ointments and so forth for medicine, or the sap of trees or plants for medicine and so forth. But that undun is the medicine, the same as du in Akan. The undun is the tree, undua the tree, the same as undua in Akan. The undu, heavy or weighty, is the same undu, to be heavy or weight in ancient Kemet. And here's the related piece. When you see the T with the dot under it, that is the hand with the open palm. Instead of T, the T sound, that is the D sound. So you have the utun with the T, and a variation of that is, in this dictionary, they put the dot under the T. It's really this hand, the open palm faced upward. It's the D sound, so that is U, not uden, but udun, to be heavy. Udun a, heavy-handed. Udun, a weight. So we said undu means heavy, to become heavy with the spirit. The hoodoo comes down and so forth. You become heavy with the spirit. Undu means medicine from roots, trees, plant life. Undu means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. When the calm happens, the possession happens. Undu, you become heavy. Undu. And we go into detail about all of that. Undu, unduadu, medicine, tree, plants, heavier weight, and then Kemet, undun, undun, undunu, same definitions. Medicine, tree, plants, heavier weight. Then you have du, meaning to descend, dismount, alight, come down, or go down. To descend into, strike of lightning, like lightning coming down and striking the tree and penetrating the tree. To feel a presentiment of foreboding. He has a presentiment of, or his heart forebodes fearful things. So undu also means to feel a presentiment of foreboding, the heaviness to come down upon, alight upon, dismount, and so forth. When the spirit comes down, when the spirit of the sun and so forth comes down and possesses, kamu, goes within and penetrates, comes down. This person is filled up with this spirit. Then they become heavy, undu, heaviness or weight. And then they have the undu, the capacity to presentiment of foreboding, to see what's unfolding in the future. They can communicate with the spirit and they'll show you this is what's about to happen. This is what's going on in someone's life. You know, this person is about to have an illness and so forth. They can tell you what's unfolding in the future and so forth. And you can see spiritually what's taking place because the possession happened. You became heavy with the spirit. Your body was transformed, daimu, transformed within and so forth. In this context, you didn't go mad or dime. You just transformed within, daimu or dime. And you can feel the presentiment of foreboding. You can see what's happening in the spirit realm before it manifests in the physical realm. So that relationship between undu, medicine, undu to become heavy, undu to feel a presentiment of foreboding, spirit possession are all related cosmologically and linguistically. The final piece on that, same word once again, you'll see undun, to make an offering. Undun, offering, gift. And they're talking about ritual offerings. Undun right here, and altar. Undunit, or Undunet, a shrine at Mennefer, misnomer Memphis. But Mennefer was a sacred capital of Kemet. They're talking about a sacred shrine of a divinity in that region. The Undun is the hoodoo shrine. Undu is the offerings, giving the hoodoo and so forth, giving the ritual offerings. We use that term exactly the same way today. in the Hoodoo tradition as we use in ancient Kemet and in the Akan language. Udhu, a table or altar for offerings of meat and drink which were set on the altar. The Udu altar and so forth for the deity or ancestral spirit. So, and then we give some more definitions and talking about the whole embalming piece. Ud or Udu, to shoot out fire when someone is putting hoodoo on somebody. So it's a number of different connotations, but it's all shown. Undun, to copy or write. Undunu, the copyist of Tahuti, talking about scribing. So when we're talking about divination and sacred symbolism and spirit possession and so forth, that's what they're talking about, that sacred scribing, the Dinka symbols, Medut and Toro hieroglyphics. Undu, the solar or our divinity. Undunu, a number of divinities, a class of deities. This is the pyramid text and the 10th hour of the Duat. So, here in one of the texts of Kemet, we translate, when making ritual offerings to the Abosom, you are invoking, guard against offering that which the deity detests. So you give what's in harmony with the divinity, that carries the energy of the divinity. If you're giving some food and so forth to the divinity, it resonates at the same frequency as the deity. You give that. If you have a fiery divinity, you give fiery food like ginger or something. It provokes the energy of the individual spirit, and then they dispense their energy to you and replenish yours and so forth. It's a feedback mechanism. When you're giving an offering to a divinity, guard against giving that which is out of harmony with the divinity or what they quote unquote detest. The important part about that is when offering, the term is undunu. In this context, undunu. In Akwamu, that would be undun. In Asante, it would be undunu. The offering is called the undun or undunu. The offering is called the hoodoo. When giving the hoodoo to the deity, guard against, that which the deity abominates. We were using the term hoodoo back in ancient Kemet. And we did another translation of a text in ancient Kemet there. Now, let me bring this full circle. And I'll answer some of the questions in the chat room right after this. Now, this is critical. This is one of our books. Okay, so one of our books is the Okra Complex, the Soul of Akan Fo, talking about the nature of the soul as divine consciousness in the Akan culture. So this is one of the 31 books I have published. It's one of the important books because we talk about the nature of the soul. The soul is the divine consciousness, the deity dwelling in the head region. The soul is not the breath. That's misinformation. From the white snarl spring, and our people repeat that, which is nonsense. There's a difference between the Ba, which is the term for spirit, the divine living solar fire energy surging throughout your spirit body, and the Ka, which is the soul, the divine consciousness, the deity in the head region dwelling in your head region. A male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female, and this is only for Black people. So the Ba is the spirit, Ba'et is the feminine spirit, Ka is the soul, divine consciousness, Ka'et is the feminine expression of that. Now, in this book, we go into detail about the nature of the soul as divine consciousness, what your divine function in the world is, why you are in the world. It is written into the divinity that governs the head, just like your brain has the blueprint of everything that takes place in the billions of cells in your body. Your spirit's brain, which is a radiant force in the head region of your spirit body, encoded with that is your divine function in the world. It's a deity that dwells with you, an elder or elder's divinity, guiding you throughout the course of your life. That force you feel in your head that's pulling you towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order and pushing you away from things. And you say, something told me in my head that I shouldn't have gone there, or I shouldn't have done this. That is the pull of the Okra to move you towards the right thing, or the pushing away by the Okrawa, of things you shouldn't engage in. So it's a force in nature, and the more you engage that force, you can communicate directly with him or her. It's your own personal divinity. a child of the great divinity Ka and Kai, divinities Ka and Kai. So, in that book, we're talking about a number of things and what the, your divine function in the world is, and it's written into your spirit's brain and so forth. But at the end, we talk about mental illness. We touch on that. Okay. So we say when we engage in disorder, we make ourselves repulsive to Inyame wa Inyame, the great mother and great father, supreme being, Yabosom, the deities, and Nananom Unsamafo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and our Okra, soul divine consciousness. Our ancestral religious practice is about aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And when we make legitimate mistakes, we realign our thoughts and intentions with divine order through the ritual practices of ritual song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, ritual chant, ritual meditation, pouring libation, giving offerings, and so forth. Different things that we do to realign ourselves with order ritually. It's all about establishing divine order in our lives, every thought, intention, and action, aligning with divine order every moment of every day. And when we make mistakes, we realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions through the ritual process. So if you consistently engage in disorder, you're going against the divinity, that radiant force in the head region is pulling you in this direction, you're going the other direction. You're creating disorder, discordance. Just like two magnets on a table repelling one another, when you engage in disorder, you repel the divine forces of divine order in creation, which are the forces in nature. So you make yourself repulsive when you're consistently engaged in that. If you continue to dwell in disordered thoughts, intentions, and actions with deliberate effort, the okra will detach from the individual. In Akan culture, it is said in such an instance, nekra edriane, meaning his okra, his soul, has fled from him. This is a grave situation which must be addressed ritually. If the individual does not ritually restore order to himself or herself and draw his or her okra back to his or her spirit, soon, the okra will return to Inyame wa Inyame, never to return to the individual. So what are we saying with regard to that? You saw the imagery of the spirit of the individual in the form of a bird flying away from the body. The deity that dwells with you is just like someone coming and getting in your car and sitting in the passenger seat. It's one vessel, the car, but there are two entities in the vessel. You who are directing the wheel and you're in control of the direction of the vessel, but you have a passenger who's giving you guidance about the best means by which you need to move to get to your destination. Now, that's like the divinity in your head dwelling with you. A male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female. If you go against that force of nature, which is a force of divine order, just like someone can get out of the car and leave, and now you don't know where you're going and so forth, that spiritual force can leave and detach itself from the head and move on. If you don't get back in alignment with divine order and become magnetic so you can draw that force back, if you stay repulsive like the two magnets repelling, when you flip the magnets back to opposite polarities, they jump together. But if you put them at the same polarities, they will repel every time, and there's nothing that's going to make them come together. Even if you force them together, once you let them go, the magnets will jump apart. But if you change the polarities, they will jump together and stay together unless you pull them apart. So if you get back in harmony with order, you will magnetize the Kra, that embodiment of divine order, back to your spirit, and it will reinstall itself in the spiritual head. But if you stay out of harmony with order, you will repel that force and it will leave detached, nekradriane, and it will go back to the supreme being. And just like a drop of water returning to the ocean and disappearing in the ocean, that drop of soul from the great divine soul consciousness will return to the origin, and then you will be a spirit body without a spirit's brain. Just like imagine a person walking around and their brain is gone. You're a spirit body without a force of divine order anchoring you in divine order and therefore in morality. every group has a title for that. The Akan say Nekradriane, the soul is fled. The Yoruba will talk about how the Oriri can detach from a person. The people practicing Vodun, the Ewe people will say how the Seilido can detach from the person and what things need to be done ritually to coax it back and so forth. Everybody has a thing for that, understanding of that. So what happens when it's prolonged? That condition is prolonged. We said it's a grave condition. There are three conditions we say that can befall the individual who suffers this permanent detachment from and departure from the okra. And before we say that, that sometimes that happens with people. You're going through something, or you're just totally detached from that divinity, and you feel sick in the head, nauseous in the head. You feel disconnected, disaligned, and so forth. And at some point, you instinctively say, I need to get myself together. And you start getting back in harmony with order, realigning yourself, doing what you need to do. And the okra realigns itself with you. It didn't fully detach and leave. It just kind of slightly, partially detached because you were being repulsive. It kind of moved to the side and so forth. You realigned yourself. But if you permanently engage in that kind of detaching, permanent disorder, repulsion, and so forth, consistently rejecting divine order, like I'm going to do criminal, discordant things consistently, this is what happens. Three different things that can happen. One, the individual will face imminent death, so the person can die. Two, the individual will not die, but will manifest permanent odying, madness, insanity, various forms of psychosis, including certain expressions of what is called schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, other so-called Axis 1 diagnoses, etc. We say some expressions of quote-unquote psychosis are simply caused by the influence of discarnate spirits and can be easily and swiftly neutralized. Others, however, are truly manifestations of a permanent detachment from the okra. That is important. Sometimes, like we said, sometimes if you get poisoned and you start acting, you start crying or, yelling or something like that because you're in excruciating pain, that's because something is causing that. You've got poison, something's in your system is causing cramping pain in your stomach, and you're groaning or whatever. That's a legitimate reason for that to happen. And people say, oh, that's because they got poisoned and they need to go to the hospital, whatever. But you could also be going through something like that, groaning and in pain because you're possessed by a discarnate spirit, a wayward spirit that was earthbound, that's a discordant, unaligned spirit, and they're in the body and you were too receptive and they're making you move in a certain way. Someone can assist you to repel that spirit and you get back to normal. That's a temporary, manifestation of discordant behavior. It's the result of an outside agency that's affecting or afflicting you. However, some expressions of discordant, odying, quote unquote, madness and so forth is because you were engaged in disorder consistently, and then your crowd detached, and now you're a spirit without a soul, and you're a discordant individual. The difference, by the way, and we mentioned this in the book, and we go into detail about this in the book, the real difference spiritually between Black people, wherever we exist in the world, and all non-Black individuals, as Asians, Europeans, Hindus, Arabs, white Hispanics, pseudo-Native Americans, and so forth, we have a kra wa, soul of divine consciousness, of divinity in the head region, and none of them have that. They never have and never will. That's the difference between us. So that's important. Now, so we have to make those distinctions, especially with regard to mental health. Sometimes people's discordant behavior is because a spirit is possessing them, and a priest or priestess can assist you in repelling that spirit and you get back to normal. Sometimes it's because of detachment. The third, so one, someone could die. If it's permanently detached, you could die soon. Secondly, you don't die, but you manifest psychotic behavior. Third, the individual will manifest extreme antisocial behavior, externalized Odaim. Hold on one second. You say externalized Odaim, committing murder, rape, child molestation, various forms of criminality, various other forms of perversity, including sexual deviance, which is homosexuality, dissexuality. The divinity that governs your head will not dwell within your head region if you're engaged in dissexual, homosexual behavior. You will repel that force in nature, that deity, if you're engaged in that behavior. Some people were molested as children. It creates discordance. Once they want to get back in alignment with order, then the divinity will attach itself. They repel that discordant, perverse behavior. They won't have those desires anymore, and so forth. We talk about that in our book, Coco Bo. We did a thing on that. People who practice ancestral religion, anybody who's gone through child molestation, rape, all these different things, you can repel the negative spirits that still coax you into that, as well as the triggers and conditionings that were forced upon you by that criminal act. You can overcome that through the practice of ancestral religion and realign yourself. So, but if people are engaged in that because they want to engage in disorder and so forth, your crowd will not dwell with you while you're engaging in that. Just like if you have a friend and you want to engage in criminality, if your friend decided they wanted to engage in raping a stranger or something, or anybody, stranger or known person, or engage in some criminal act, you're not going to dwell with somebody like that. They're going to be repulsive to you, and you're going to detach from that kind of individual. Your kra, while the divinity in the head region, will not dwell with you if you're engaged in child molestation, rape. I mean, you're committing these things, dissexuality, homosexuality, criminal dishonesty, intellectual dishonesty, spiritual perversity, oppressing other people and entities, displaying so-called psychopathic behavior and antisocial personality disorder. These are externalized expressions of Odaim or madness. When the crowd detaches, you see someone who has a real mental illness in the true sense, there's some measure of disalignment from the okra. If it's mild, then they're just disaligned. You're doing things you know you shouldn't be doing. You're doing self-destructive things. You're drinking alcohol and getting drunk and being self-destructive, smoking weed, or being angry and lashing out at your friends, doing self-destructive things. That's a disalignment. There's just a disalignment. You're self-destructive. It may even lead to your own death, but you're disaligned. But you're not consciously seeking to repel the forces in nature and divine order and say, I want to be grounded in criminality and disorder. When you're like that, consciously and consistently, then you repel the divinity. And that's when you get to these three possibilities. We say, well, some forms of Odaim psychosis can be internalized, self-destructive, self-mutilating behaviors, suicidal, etc. Some forms of Odaim are externalized, affecting the individual as well as others. We say homosexuality, which we call dissexuality, meaning sexuality is not present, is an example of externalized Odaim, madness, mental illness. A disalignment from the okra, which manifests in the individual and motivates the individual to conscript others into the Odaim, the psychosis. This sexuality resulting from an Akan African individual being victimized, like as we said earlier, molested as a child can be a form of temporary Odaim, temporary mental illness. Detachment of the okra, slightly detached, but still in the vicinity, in the orbit of the spirit, which can be corrected by realigning with the okra ritually. Otherwise, if you don't correct it, the okra will permanently leave, detach, return to the supreme being, and the mental illness becomes permanent. And we say the sum without the okra, the spirit without the soul is like a body without the brain. The individual manifesting this condition thus becomes a disordered or quote unquote living corpse. And then we say, indeed, this is the nature of all of the whites and their offspring, as we said earlier. Now, so that's very extreme. Now you can have this notion of neglecting the okra. Just like someone saying, hey, you need to do this. Hey, you shouldn't do that. And you're like, oh yeah, you're right. but then you just neglect it and you end up doing it because it's a habit and you do something, you're self-destructive, and you're smoking cigarettes, and then you develop lung cancer and so forth, and you're trying to go to a holistic physician to take care of it because you were neglecting yourself, because you got into a habit. You weren't necessarily trying to be criminal, but neglect leads to disalignment. That's not 100% detachment. You're just disaligned, but you can realign. So neglect of the okra by our people can lead to disalignment from the okra and the manifestation of temporary odam, temporary psychosis, mental illness. In such a state, we become susceptible to the negative influences of discarnate, wayward, earthbound spirits. Such discarnate spirits who are lustful, misguided, and/or malicious in life continue such behavior after their deaths, having been denied access to Asamindo. They dwell in various areas, including homes, forests, near rivers, near the places where they died or were murdered. Such deceased spirits can be blood-related or unrelated. When we neglect our okra, or become disaligned from the okra, we no longer wield the compulsive, impulsive force of She and Shebia, and thus the energy of our patriclan and matriclan deities no longer attuned. So we can be pulled into these different, under the influence of these discarnate, wayward spirits when we neglect ourselves. If you neglect yourself physically, then you compromise your physical immunity. And then you go around someone who has a virus, they're sick, they have the flu and so forth. And because you compromise your immunity, those bacteria can get inside of you and take you down. But if your immunity is strong, just on a basic level, you can go to your wife or your husband and so forth. They're sick, they're coughing, you can sleep next to them, get up. Your immunity is strong. You repel these negative little bacteria easily without effort because your immune system is strong. When your spiritual immunity is strong because you engage in ritual SUSUW meditation, ritual Oshui libation, ritual offering, Afariba, and so forth, and you do basic ritual exercises, practices, you keep your immunity strong, then wayward little spirits that are earthbound, that are hanging around different places in different parts of the city or certain homes where these spirits are hanging around and so forth, they're repelled by you. They can't penetrate your aura. But someone who is weak spiritually, they can attach themselves to them and cause temporary odam. They start causing different ideas and beliefs. The person starts thinking, maybe I should do this. Maybe where did this thought come from? Where are these foreign ideas? Maybe I should try this criminal behavior. Maybe I should engage in this sexuality. Whites and Offspring said it's okay. Maybe I should start thinking about that. Maybe I should start smoking and drinking and engaging in promiscuity, even though you know it's wrong, but some spirit is influencing you and you're too weak to realize what's happening. So they lead you into a temporary, mental discordance, maladaptive behavior, psychosis, and so forth, which you can come back from. So we go into detail about that. And, many of our people are still worshiping fictional characters like Jesus and Muhammad, Allah, Buddha, Brahman, Yahweh, and so forth, because that temporary odam, we're engaged in self-destructive behavior, false, practices, because we're guided by the whites and their offspring instead of listening to truth and engaging reality. So I'm going to take some questions. One of the reasons we brought this up, I have a direct and personal experience of this. So before becoming a full-time entrepreneur, I was working in the field of mental health for over a decade in Chicago as well as Washington, D.C. On one hand, with youth and therapeutic foster care, all of the children at therapeutic foster care have mental health diagnoses. That's why they're in therapeutic foster care as opposed to conventional foster care. When I was working with the agency with adults and all, I was working at Black-owned agencies and all Black clients, working with adults with mental illnesses, bipolar or schizophrenia or psychotic disorder, whatever it is. So I was, doing that for, a number of years in Chicago as well as DC. That's on the conventional side. And of course, being involved in ancestral religion and doing divination and so forth for people and all of that, you can deal with that on the ritual and cultural and spiritual side. And as we did a broadcast recently, Chedep and Chedepit, titles of a priest or priestess, the origin of the term therapy. The priests and priestesses and diviners are the original, quote unquote, psychologists and psychiatrists and all of that. But remove this, pull this up. Some of you are aware of this. Some of you may not be aware. I'm going to show you the screen. This is on our YouTube channel. You can watch this full 13-part series. The series is called When a Woman Stalks a Man, Legal System, Mental Illness, Spirit Children, and Hoodoo. And the reason you see me there is because for the past 7 years, I've been stalked by mentally ill women. The past 4 years, it's been in the court system on the civil side and the criminal side. I've been before a judge over the past 4 years over 25 times in civil court and criminal court. She's been incarcerated 3 times. Most recently, she was incarcerated the year before last and so forth. She got out. So I had to file an anti-stalking order. She was showing up at my home and so forth. Mentally ill individual, but she was somebody who was studying my work. She migrated here from the state of Kansas to stalk me, showed up at my home, never gave her my address. We never had any form of, relationship and so forth. She started saying that the spirits, the ancestresses and ancestors, and Inyame wa Inyame revealed to her that I'm her divine complement, reincarnated to be together and so forth, all these different things. So she started showing up at the home, had to call the police and so forth because I wasn't going to engage physically with a, I know not to do that, let them take care of that. They sent a male and a female officer. They sent her away, but they told me to file an anti-stalking order, which I did. That's a civil procedure and so forth. She was evading being served, but eventually we got the summons served and so forth. Anti-stalking order put in place. She violated that, which I knew she would. Criminal contempt charges were filed. She was found guilty. They gave her a year probation and so forth. Within days, she violated. She was incarcerated. She got out. A few months later, she violated again. She was incarcerated again, but then they gave her a mental health evaluation. She had already been diagnosed with a mental illness, but she was given another mental health evaluation. She was determined to be incompetent to stand trial, so she was transferred from the jail to the psychiatric hospital, which is like being in jail because it's a locked facility for competency restoration. She didn't meet that within the 40 or 80 days and so forth, so they committed her to the psychiatric hospital for a year. They let her out within 7 months. She started violating the court order again. She was arrested again. We just had court this week. But then she was arraigned on new criminal contempt charges. She absconded from DC and fled to Kansas. I was hiding out in Kansas. All along, she was cyber stalking and filing multiple documents. She filed a defamation suit against me. She was filing thousands of pages of documents talking about she was the owner of a black town in Kansas and we were designed to be together and build this black nation and so forth. She said that she was raped by her children's fathers and she gave birth to her 3 sons. And she said because they were conceived by rape, by definition, by default, since I'm her divine complement assigned by the Supreme Being, I'm the father of her children. And she put that forward in court, and she asked the court to award her $637,000 in back child support for her 3 sons who are now grown. When she first showed up at my house, by the way, she took a bus from Kansas to Washington, D.C. for 20 hours with her 3 sons and showed up at my house unannounced. I never gave her my address. She didn't say, hey, I'm going to be coming out. We weren't friends. She was just someone who, studied the work and came to 2 events within a 2-year period. And after that, showed up at my house. The whole 13-part series, which is a total of 4+ hours, It's on the YouTube channel. I show all the court documents. She's talking about her son was decapitated by the white Jewish mafia. She was enslaved for 40 years with her sons by the white Jewish mafia. And when she went to my website and learned about hoodoo and learned about who she is, she was able to break free from that enslavement. And she was escaping from enslavement with her sons to come to my house. And that's why she showed up. Total nonsense. She said her son was decapitated by the white Jewish mafia and she had escaped slavery. And this is the reason why she came to my home, and she wasn't stalking me. She was just trying to escape slavery and human trafficking. Turns out a few weeks prior to her filing that document with the civil court, her son was arrested in Kansas. And the arrest record is on the police, website. So when I had to respond to this lawsuit, I posted the police, record, showing that after she filed this document saying that her son was decapitated, and that some government agents lured her outside in the morning, and one of them was posing as an early morning jogger. When he opened up his backpack, the head of her son was in the backpack. There are literally hundreds of stories like this, that she filled up hundreds of pages of filings with the Superior Court and the Appellate Court and the Supreme Court. And I've been back and forth having to answer these, filings for the past few years. So much so that the judge imposed a pre-filing injunction against her because she was flooding the court system with a bunch of nonsensical stories and filings and so forth. So they said, you are not allowed to make any other filings unless you ask the permission of the court first, which of course they would deny. So when I put that in the, part of the response, that actually her son is alive. He was never, of course, decapitated. His head was never in a backpack, of course. I'm not the spirit father of these spirit children and so forth. Then she responded in an amended complaint saying that the white Jewish mafia hired someone as an impersonator of her son that looks just like her son, and they send him out periodically to show his face to pretend like the son is still alive, but that's not really her son, that's an imposter. And she petitioned the court for the FBI to give fingerprints and all this, which of course the FBI is not going to do. The court is not going to authorize that because she's just wasting the court's time. There are hundreds of stories like that within these filings. After she argued in court that I am the father by default of her 3 children because they were conceived through rape, she asked the court for me to bring a specific plant from the Odum tree in Akan culture, and I talked about this in a podcast episode. We use this specific plant to make tea from the bark of the Odum tree, and it's given to someone as a form of truth serum because it's poisonous, to see if they're telling the truth, to assess guilt or innocence. So if you're telling a falsehood in a tribunal, in a legislative body, they'll say, okay, well, if you're telling the truth, why don't you drink this tea from the bark of the Odum tree? If they're telling the truth and they drink that poisonous tea, the abosom would not allow them to die. But if they're lying and they drink that tea, which they know is poisonous, they're going to die. So if they're telling a lie and the elder says, okay, well, drink the Odum, drink. If someone says, no, I don't want to drink that, that's because they're lying. If they take it right away and say, I'll drink it, no problem, then they're proving that I have nothing to hide and so forth. She filed a petition with the court for the court to order me to prepare the sacred drink from the bark of the Odum tree so that I could bring it to court during the criminal trial so she could drink it before the judge. And if she didn't drop dead, then that means that I'm really the father of her 3 sons. And I need to take care of her and all of her needs and so forth, and give her hundreds of thousands of dollars and everything else. Of course, that was denied by the judge, but these are the kinds of things that were happening. After we debunked these things and I had to file answers to this lawsuit, I won the civil case, the defamation suit on summary judgment. She filed an appeal with the appellate court. I had to answer the appellate court. She was making filings when she was in the psychiatric hospital. She was writing them by hand and snail mailing them to the court because she didn't have access to a computer. I won in the appellate court. She went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied hearing the case. She went back to the Supreme Court a second time and so forth. And then she came up with a new theory at this recent, set of criminal charges. She has new criminal charges. She said, actually, she wasn't raped by the previous children's fathers. What really happened was over 20 years ago, she gets the timeline wrong, but that doesn't matter to her. She said, over 20 years ago, my ex-wife conspired with another individual to marry me, to meet me, marry me, so she could keep me away from Crazy, the mentally ill person. She said my ex-wife was trying to keep me away from her because they knew my divine destiny with her to build a nation. So she conspired to meet me, marry me, and have my children and so forth. That was the conspiracy. But the conspired part was, she said my ex-wife stole my sperm cells, sold them to the white Jewish mafia, who in turn took the stolen sperm cells and inseminated her with them. And therefore, her 3 children are actually my biological children. Now, last year she was in court arguing stridently that because she was raped by 2 males and gave birth to these 3 sons, the rape nullified the fact that the biological father is the real father. Only the divine complement can be the real father, which would be me. So I'm the real father. Now, all of a sudden, actually, I'm the biological father as well. And she flooded the court with she'll file a 200-page document, and she'll be posting all of the language about Hoodoo and Akan Ancestral Religion and the Abosom and the Odumafo, and she's read the books and memorized everything, and has weaponized the information in an idiotic way to try to put this nonsense forward. But we've been fighting this for the past 4 years. The most recent development is when she absconded because she was being tried. She was going to be arraigned on new criminal charges. This past March 20th, she fled the district and went to Kansas and was hiding out in Kansas. They issued an extraditable bench warrant so that she can be extradited if she's found and so forth. So we didn't know where she was in Kansas. She's homeless. She's been living in a homeless shelter for the past few years. She moved from Kansas to DC to live in a homeless shelter to stalk me. So, and we've never had a relationship. I've always been respectful, talking to her just like I talk to her now. She only came to 2 events. She introduced herself for a couple of minutes. That was the first time I met her. And then a year later, she came to another event. She sat in the workshops with everybody else, talked and everything. That was the only interaction I had. And then she ordered some books and asked me to send some books to her son or something like that, or a friend who was incarcerated. Other than that, we've never had any conversation. And then that's when she showed up and started saying I'm her divine complement. So nothing negative as far as, I'm not an abusive or berating type person. Only conversations we ever had, just like I'm talking right now, that's the only kind of conversations we ever had, and they were always less than a couple of minutes. And it only happened twice. Once in 2017, and once in 2018. Only 2 times I ever saw this person. And after that, that's when she popped up at my house right after our New Year observance in September of 13,000 and what we call 19, but Gregorian calendar date 2018. But this time she, instead of being arraigned on criminal charges, she fled to Kansas. So I had to deal with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, one of the agents, the state level version of the FBI, to figure out a way to see if we can find out where she's at, because she's homeless and you don't know where she is in Kansas. We figure out a way. I found out something based on a clue that she said in an email where she might be and what could possibly happen. I connected with the KBI agent and we set it up. They were able to apprehend her. She was apprehended by the U.S. Marshals. She was incarcerated in Kansas back in April 8th. She was incarcerated there until like April 28th or something like that. And then U.S. Marshals transported her, extradited her back from Kansas to D.C. to face these criminal charges. She was arraigned on the criminal charges. She was released on her own recognizance, which didn't make sense, but she ended up violating the court order again, and then she was incarcerated. And then another mental health evaluation, competency evaluation determined that she was not competent to stand trial. So they transferred her again from jail back to the psychiatric hospital where she is now. We just had a hearing 2 days ago. She still has not restored her competency. So if she becomes competent enough to stand trial, then she'll stand trial, she'll be found guilty, and she'll go to jail for a couple of years. If she's not, they will commit her civilly to the psychiatric hospital, probably for a year or 2 years. Last time it was a year, but she got out in 7 months because she knew how to regulate her behavior so she could get out. And as soon as she got out, she was right back at it. It's important to note that she would fire her lawyer, her appointed lawyer, right before court, and then ask the judge for a continuance, saying, I want to represent myself and I need time. Then right before the next court date, she would say, well, I want this person to represent me now. Can I have a continuance? And she would push it back. So she pushed court dates from October, November, December, January, February, March. She was manipulating the court system to continuously give herself time. But eventually in the first 2 criminal trials, she represented herself as her own counsel. So when the assistant attorney general had me on the stand and I'm testifying, she's asking me what happened, all the different things. Now it's time for the cross-examination. But instead of her defense attorney cross-examining me, he's just sitting there in an advisory capacity. She's functioning as her own defense attorney, her own defense counsel. So she gets up and she starts cross-examining me on the witness stand about her stalking me. So I'm sitting on the witness stand answering the stalker, because she's her own lawyer, about how she's stalking me. So that happened in 2 separate court appearances. So this has been going on in the court side for 4 years. Total 7 years when she first showed up at the house. And then 3 years later, she came back. So she was cyber stalking for 3 years. Then 3 years later, she came back and showed up at the house again. And that's when the police got involved and everything else. But she's using all of the language of ancestral religion. When people read her stuff, they think she's telling the truth. She's kind of intellectual if you're not paying close attention. Everything you see in our books, she's putting it in there. She's filing legal documents. She's very familiar with the legal system. She's filing briefs and petitions and amended complaints. She'll file a 200-page complaint and then a 60-page complaint and a 160-page complaint. And we have to answer this stuff and so forth. She's doing a number of different things. But that's a case of Odine mental illness intersecting in a corrupt way with a misinterpretation of the Hoodoo tradition. And people who come in contact with this individual, at first, they think she's very intellectual, very sharp, very legally astute, and so forth. She's filed cases against the United States government and against the Kansas state government and, banks and other corporations. And you'll see her name with all these huge filings and so forth. Appellate court, Supreme Court, and all of this. So people who don't know better, they think she's, legitimate until they start communicating with the individual and realize there's something missing. They start realizing that okra has detached. This is not a disalignment, it's detached. So, but we did a 13-part series. And we also put it all together in one video, but it's 13 parts. So we have the 13 videos separate. Like the first one is 10 minutes. The second one is 15 minutes, 13 videos. But then we also pulled them all together in one video. So if you want to watch it, you'll see it. I pulled the court documents. It's nothing disparaging, nothing defamatory. I'm showing the actual court orders. I'm not getting into personal things. I don't do all of that. I'm just showing you this is what happened in court. This is what the judge said. This is what the filing said. This is what our response was. And this is what took place. So we're going to do, a film on that because it's a very intensive story that's taken place over the past. And I've only given you not even 1% of the manufactured stories about escaping from 40 years of slavery and becoming a hoodoo priestess and calling herself a queen mother. She created a whole lineage of hoodoo people in, Kansas that didn't exist, and a royal lineage that she's from, and she's related to my royal lineage, and the two houses needed to come together to bring forth this prophecy. All kinds of nonsense coming forward. So it's a lot more than I can say in a few minutes. And even that 4-hour piece is only a fraction of what took place, but you'll get the idea. Yeah. So it's important. The reason why it's important is because there are many people who they leave the church, leave the mosque, leave these different things, and they get involved in ancestral religion. Some of them are regular people who get involved in ancestral religion, but some of them are just people who lecture or get online and get on TikTok and Instagram and start talking about knowledge or something deep, or they want a following, they want to be popular. They may be a little bit charismatic, they can speak well, or they're kind of congenial, or they're kind of entertaining, and they get a large following. But these people are mentally ill. They're intellectual, they're sharp, they listen to the right people and listen to the right presenters. Some of them have stolen my stuff verbatim and repeated it. And people are like, wow, that's deep. And they literally are repeating verbatim our Blog Talk Radio broadcasts or our courses and so forth. And people don't know what the source is. So they're like, wow, that's good information. But these people are literally mentally ill. And some of them, some people, if you have money, they'll initiate you, quote unquote, into the priesthood or priestesshood. You're not authentic, but you have a title from some unscrupulous priest or priestess who took a few $1,000s and gave you this title and took you through some rituals. Now you're a quote unquote elder priest or priestess, and you have a following and a name, and you know how to do certain rituals. It's all performative. This is a mentally ill person who never had any connections in their real everyday life. So they tried to come to ancestral religion because they were mentally ill or self-destructive or a criminal mindset or lustful and so forth. People in their regular everyday lives from school all the way through work and so forth know that these people are really idiots, so they stay away from them. But they can create a new persona online. They can get a new name. They can memorize the speeches of good scholars and presenters and elders and repeat that, put it on their page, put links to good information on their page, and people are like, wow, you're such a wealth of information. Then they say, well, I was initiated in Nigeria, a few years ago, and I've been doing divination. So people have no idea that you're dealing with schizophrenic individuals who are intellectual, but are really, rotten to the core. Some of them criminal, some of them just self-destructive and ignorant, but some of them are criminal-minded. So we need to be aware of that. But the way you're aware of it, you do your own spiritual work, you don't get caught up like that. Do not just believe what people are saying, even if they're sharp intellectually, even if they've written books. We don't ask people, believe me what I'm saying because I wrote some books. We wrote the books, we put them out for free, ebook version, so you can study the information, learn about it, so that you can go and start doing your own ritual practice and learn directly from your own krawa, your own nsamanfo, your own abosom, and verify these things on your own. When people say, how do we join your priesthood or priestesshood? You can't. We tell everybody you need to establish your own. Resurrect your own ancestral tradition in your own clan, just like we did. We're just modeling what you can do. Find out what your clan is, if you're Fang, if you're Eve, if you're Fula. Restore that, reestablish your culture, reestablish your protocols, and build that. We're not allowing people to just come in, oh, I'm going to join you and just become part of a congregation. We don't do that. Everybody needs to know who they are, what clan they come from, reestablish that, take on a name from your own clan, your own people, and so forth. We've even had people try to name themselves after me. I'm like, that's not part of our culture. I'm like, that has nothing to do with us. That's like some Islamic nonsense where everybody takes the last name Muhammad or something. Have people trying to take on, some of my names as if that was something that would be flattering. That's actually Eurocentric. So we had to let them know that's not what we do around here. So, all right. So I'm going to take some questions. You can watch that full thing, just like you can watch our film on Hoodoo. You can watch the other film on Ancestral Divination. Let me, real quick, for the people who came in a little bit later. One of the main things that we are working on is part 2, as we said, of our documentary film. We're trying to complete the film by October for our Hoodoo Nation Festival, 11th annual. This is our crowdfund effort. We're working to finish the filming. So this is the Hoodoo Nation Festival flyer. October 18th is that day, so we're trying to get the film finished by that date. We've started filming already, but we have some things we need to complete and some traveling we have to do and some more equipment to complete that. But we're trying to raise at least a third of the funds this month, then a third in September, and the final third by the end of September, beginning of October. So if you can make a contribution now, this is the page. The link is in the chat room. I can put the link back in the chat room right quick if you didn't see it. And we're working to get that done as soon as possible. And Yedase, we thank you to the people who contributed last night during our live last night and after the live last night and this morning. We had some people contribute, so we appreciate that, Yedase. And we're working to get this film out so we can screen it. We're going to have this pre-screening. That's the goal on October 18th at the festival, at the Hoodoo Festival, 11th annual. But also, if you can't come to the festival in person, we will have a link where we will, you can watch it, private, wherever you are. For those who have contributed to the film, you'll be the first to see the film and so forth. All right, so let me get to some of these questions and comments in the chat room. If you have some questions about hoodoo or spirit possession or some of the other topics that we touched on, you can post them in the chat room now. All right. Okay, can mental illness be caused by someone placing a spirit upon an individual, putting pressure on their minds, placing thoughts in their heads, and how best can one repulse such attacks? So, yes, and this is the way, anytime you think about the spirit realm, think about the physical realm. You could tell somebody, right? You can give somebody some money right now who's criminal, and they can say, I want you to go attack this person. And you give them the money and they'll go over there and attack the person, and grab them or body slam them or whatever, and attack the person or push them around, whatever. If that person transitions and they're a spirit and they're just as criminal and discordant as they were when they were alive, you say, I will give you an offering. We talked about this last night. I'll kill an animal for you. I'll give you an offering if you go to this person and do this to this person. So you cut the throat of a chicken or a goat or something. That burst of energy that's released when the spirit leaves the body of the animal, just a short burst of energy. It's just like the burst of when you fire up some incense and the smoke fills up the air and you breathe it in and it affects your body and so forth. That burst of energy when the spirit leaves the animal and so forth, they will smell or breathe that in or feed on that, just like a crackhead will take in some crack. It will last for between 5 and 20 minutes, the high, and then it's worn off. And now they're seeking some more crack so they can do it again. It doesn't last. That burst of energy when someone is given an offering, whether it's a food offering or an animal sacrifice or whatever it is, and they're fiending for that. They don't get that kind of energy as a spirit in the spirit realm, earthbound, unless someone on earth gives it to them ritually. So if you say, I'll give it to you, nobody else is paying attention to you as a spirit, I'll kill an animal for you. I want you to, as a spirit, to go to this person's home while they're dreaming, get into their dreams, affect them. Go to where they are. They're in the bathroom combing their hair, and nudge them, and they get pushed, and they feel it if they're receptive, or embrace them, and you push this magnetic pressure on them, and their head is throbbing, and they feel this pressure in their head, and so forth. Or you're constantly whispering in their ear, planting thoughts, and they're having these weird thoughts about doing something dissexual or doing something criminal, like stealing something or whatever. Just like you can do that with a person physically, go over here and attack this person. I'll pay you. Or I'll give you some drugs. Spiritually, go over here and attack this person. As you can see, the communication with the disembodied spirit does not in and of itself constitute religious practice of spirituality. You're just engaged in criminality at that point. Ancestral religion is not just communicating with disembodied spirits. Ancestral religion is about aligning with the spiritually cultivated class of ancestral spirits and the forces in nature. And the forces in nature are embodiments of divine order, the Abosom, so they're not going to participate in criminality. They only operate in harmony with order, so you can't invoke them to engage in disorder. They don't obey people. There's some idiots talking about, we don't worship the deities, we tell them what to do. That's pure stupidity, pure idiocy. Pseudo-metaphysicians, people talking about knowledge and metaphysics, and pure idiocy. The forces in nature do not obey people just because they do a ritual. The only individuals that the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou obey is Nyame wa Nyame Amenet, Amen, the Great Mother, Great Father, Supreme Being. You can't just do a ritual and force the deity that animates the sun to do something for you because you did a ritual and now they're your slave. That's idiotic. That mindset comes from the whites in Orange Spring, who cannot communicate with any deity, so they would like to pretend that they can trap a deity in a shrine and make them work for them. Never been true. So, but yes, that's how that happens. The way you defend yourself, again, go back physically. If you strengthen yourself by lifting weights and learning martial arts and so forth, if someone tries to attack you, you can beat them down. If you strengthen yourself health-wise, and if someone coughs on you and projects some negative bacteria on you, you can repel it because your immune system is strong. If someone that tries to attack you spiritually, and you're spiritually strong because you engage in ancestral communication at your shrine with your Nsamanfo, as well as your Akra, and you engage in ritual practice regularly to tune up your spirit body, you can easily repel these kinds of attacks. If it's more intensified, you may need to connect with somebody who has the capacity and the expertise to repel such spirits. Okay. Okay, and this is kind of a similar answer, even though it's a different question. In this culture, a lot of our people who are spiritually gifted can see spirits, and the deities are diagnosed with mental illness. How do one help such persons? What we've always done, one of the ways we do that, one of the reasons that we publish the books and release them for free, first of all, they get accurate information. So they know that there's nothing wrong with them. They're just someone who has a greater capacity to see or hear and experience the spirit realm, so they don't get nervous about thinking that they're mentally ill. And then they can learn how to engage in ritual practice, so they can hone those skills just like you learn how to exercise and strengthen your body and so forth. So it's about ritual practices, the answer, consistent, and knowledge itself. Let me give a addendum to that. Two things are happening with regard to that. Let me give a quick addendum. And some of you are aware of this. Okay, so all right, so let me go back to this. Coming up this Tuesday is our next 4-week online course. It's the final 4-week online course for the summer session. And we're talking about SUSUW. It's a meditation instructor certification. So this 4-week course, you can be certified as a meditation instructor. SUSUW is the ancient term for meditation. So you can conduct meditation sessions at businesses with their employees when they have seminars and they have a breakout session and they say, we're going to bring someone in to do a mindfulness exercise before we start our conference. They bring you out, you do a 15 or 20 minute or 30-minute session. They'll pay you $200 or $300 or $400 for that. Or you can go to schools, kindergarten through colleges. Schools are incorporating meditation at the beginning of the day to focus the children, regulate their behavior, and so forth. You can go to human services organizations, working with the people who are in women's shelters, family shelters, mental health organizations where they have group therapy sessions. And the therapist will say, I'm going to bring someone out on Friday to take us through a short meditative session to keep us more focused and grounded and strengthen our sense of self-worth so we can be inspired to, move forward in life and so forth. So a number of different applications where everywhere you go, you can set up a contractual arrangement. I'm certified. They have money set aside to bring people out regularly. And we show you how you can get those kinds of contracts and so forth. Usually it's through word of mouth. They're looking for someone who is certified to do a 20-minute session. You show that certification and you can do that and you can start generating money immediately after those 4 weeks. So that next course starts this Tuesday, August 19th. This is the page. I'm going to put the link in the chat room, the SUSUW page. We have a few spots, like 10 spots left open for that. You can register now. That's the SUSUW. Oh, wait a minute. I have to put it back in the chat room with the proper. Okay, so it's odwirafo.com/susu.html. That's the link. And you'll see that we have a number of videos talking about, meditation and so forth, and SUSUW and our ancient practices, and our book, Ankh, The Origin of the Term Yoga, Karakasa, Origin and Nature of the Chakra, where we prove that the terms yoga and chakra are taken from yonk, which was corrupted to yonka, yonk, and so forth, and yoka, taken from ancient Kemet, and karakara in ancient Kemet was corrupted into kakara chakra. But we have this process so you can impact the community positively, but also generate income for yourself. Some people do it part-time. Some people have a school on Monday, a business on Tuesday, a group session on Thursday, a community organization who's having a Juneteenth celebration before they start. They want the people to take them through a session. Or a Black bookstore wants you to come out and say, can you do a session for us? On a Friday, we have people come out and speak. We'll pay you $300 to do that. So some people do a little, a session once every other day, and they'll generate $400 or $500 a week just by doing 1-hour sessions or half-hour sessions in different parts of the city. Some people do it full-time. Some people make it a full-time business. Some people do it part-time. But it's a way to generate income after 4 weeks certification and impact our community. That's the reason we created the certification process. Prior to this, people had to go to white organizations and spend thousands of dollars to get certified. Our process, and we just put this new payment plan option up. Since you are subscribers, you have a discount. So the registration is, the books are included, free book downloads. The registration is $399, basically $400 for the 4 weeks, basically $99 or $100 a week. Since you're a subscriber, you see it says Patreon, a subscriber discount. It's $300, $299, but we have a payment plan option. We just put the new payment plan option up because the Square platform Some people try to get on Square and do the payment plan option on Square, but Square only qualifies you for a small amount the first time you get on. And it takes a minute before they qualify you for larger amounts. So if you click on the green button, the pay HIP option, you'll see that we have the new payment plan options. You can pay the full amount if you want to, $3.99, or for you, since you're subscribers, your amount will be $2.99. So you could pay that in full, or you can put $1.99 down and then you can make the other payment the following month, or you could do a $99 deposit, and then each month you can make the other $99 payment until you pay it off. So we just put that new pay HIP version up. So what you'll see is says the payment plans, if you do not qualify for the afterpay option, the brown button, you can use the pay HIP option, the green button, no credit qualification necessary. If you click the brown button, that's another Square payment plan option. And it, with Square, if you click on that, that was the original option. And the platform, the payment platform that shows up with that, this is how it looks. And I'm just showing you this to show you why we added this new pay HIP option. Originally, we just had the Square payment platform. So as you can see, that's the same thing. So you would go down, for example, and select the option, and you would click checkout. And at checkout, you had the option of filling in your information up here. And then it said, afterpay 4 interest-free installments of $99.75. So you could click that option and it would take you in. Some people, if you've already had afterpay before, they'll approve you for that, and then you just pay $99.75 that, right then, and then you're registered. You take the class, and then next month you pay $99, and the following month, and afterpay will take care of that, and you're done. You're already registered. Everything is cool. You'll get your certification, and you pay afterpay on their schedule. But some people, afterpay would only approve 100 or 200, or they'll approve 50 because you were a first-time afterpay user. So people weren't able to register because they weren't approved for the whole amount. So this is why I created the pay HIP option. So we click the green button instead. Once again, you go back, and there's no credit qualification. You simply pick whichever down payment you want, make that, and you're registered, and you can start taking the class. And then you yourself, you will come back to this site next month, make your installment, come back again the following month. By then, you will already have your certification. You will already be working your very first gig. Usually it'll be $100 or $200 to do a presentation like at a school or a business or a cultural organization. And you will pay for either your entire tuition or most of it. And the second time you do a presentation, you will have covered it within the first month after getting your certification. So, and we made it affordable like that. Some people are charging $1,500, $2,000 for a certification in meditation or mindfulness. They're not teaching you the origin of meditation, SUSUW from ancient Kemet. You see, this is Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, seated in the regular meditative posture thousands of years ago. So, this is what we're giving you, the real information for much cheaper. You have access to the books you can download for free, perpetually and so forth. Much better product, accurate information, much cheaper, and you make your money back right away. So that's one thing. And then on the other side of that, some of you are familiar with this as well. So that starts Tuesday. We also have, which is in force right now, so you can enroll right now. It started in August for this this fall semester. We have our Nimdeesem, which is our Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy degree program. We have created and curated 42 online courses over the course of the past 25 years. I've published 31 books, now 32 as a matter of fact. The most recent anthology. The first book was published on the winter solstice, December 21st of 12,997, which in the Gregorian calendar is 1998. So this year will be the 28th anniversary of the Ubin Sheng, the ancestral summons. And then after that, year after year, we publish more books. So I have 32 books now. We just released the anthology, which is, I'll just show you this right quick. This book. And we recently have a question in the chat room. We recently did a revision. There were a few, not substantive errors, but like typo kind of errors in the book that Amazon pointed out. So we just recently went through all of those, corrected them, re-uploaded the book to Amazon. It was reapproved and so forth. So it's up there. So we have to order some new copies of the revised version. Once Amazon ships those to us, then we're going to ship them to you, and you'll get the new, corrected version of the book. So this is the book. Is 600 pages, 8.5 by 11. So it's a large encyclopedia-sized book, full color and so forth. 12 of the 31 books we've published in the form of anthology. We revised and expanded these books and so forth. That video talks about the book and everything that's in it and so forth. So that's the 32nd book we published, but 32 books, 42 online courses over the past 25 years. So and when you look at we had already planned to do this. Let me just click on the piece right quick. Once we got to the 42nd course, and this image is a collage of the 42 flyers from the original 42 courses. This image in the middle is most of the 31 books laid out and so forth. But we had planned once we got to a specific number that we would create the degree program. We created and taught the 42nd course last year. People took that course, they got certified. They were able to go out into the community. It's evidence-based to show that, this information is effective and so forth. So we've been able to not only create the courses, curate them, teach them across the country and so forth. We've been over 33 different cities across 20 plus states and outside the country teaching this over the past 25 years. So now it's evidence-based, and all of this has been effective for youth as well as adults. So we put together the 42 courses in the context of a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy degree. If you look at any major university to see what it takes to obtain a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, like at a Georgia State University, it's typically 40 or 42 courses that you have to take over the course of however long it takes for them to obtain that degree. We have 42 courses in accurate information. We're not talking about Greek philosophy and Roman philosophy and Arabic and all of that misinformation that's not useful and so forth, and much of it is corrupted from ancient Kemet. We're teaching actual philosophy, various expressions of ancestral religion and culture and nation building and holistic health and a number of different things. So the 42 courses, we have created the degree program. And what's different about it, we have a way where you can utilize the degree immediately to begin to generate income for yourself, and we list these things out. And so you can enroll now. It is open now. The new semester has begun in August. It's a self-paced study. So there are 42 courses. For example, you study the first course. When you're ready, when you've gone through all of the video sessions for the course and read the books and so forth. When you're ready, you say, I'm ready to test on this course. We set up a Zoom, a live, a private Zoom and so forth. You take that test, you pass that. We have a question and answer. So anything you need clarified can be clarified. You pass that course that week. Then you go to the next course. Let's say that was a course that was a 4-module course. You go through all the videos for that, the books. When you're ready, your test. So all 42 courses, you can either test for 1 course per week, and that's 42 weeks, or you may opt to test 2 courses per week. We're not going to do more than 2 courses per week. So you may take in fact, let me show you right quick. On our page, we have the original flyers for all of the courses. So for example, talking about philosophy, the Aperu course, Hebrews never existed, the cosmology of the crossover in ancient Kemet. So we talk about the Aperu, that term from ancient Kemet that they stole and manufactured a fictional group of characters who never existed of any race whatsoever, called the Hebrews or Jews, total fictional group. They stole a story from the Book of the Cow of Heaven in Kemet, talking about Tahuti leading the deceased individuals to the ancestral realm, and they tried to turn that into Moses leading the people to the promised land in Palestine. So we go through the cosmology, the pyramid text, and everything else. That was a 4-week course. There are 4 2-hour video sessions and then the books and articles associated with that. So say you studied all 4 of those and you were ready to take that test and you did it in a week. That 1 week you said, okay, I'm ready. Take the test and you pass that. So you put that course aside. Then you go to the next course. Say it was another 4-week course and you were ready for that. You tested that the following week. Some of the courses are 6 weeks. Some of them are 4 weeks. Some of them were 7-week courses. So they're all archived. Maybe you want to take 2 of the 4-session courses together and test both of them the same week. If you do 2 courses a week, you'll complete the program in 21 weeks. If you do 1 course per week, test 1 per week, 42 weeks, you'll be done. But one thing that's important to note, hold on a second. The very first course in our, bachelor's degree program is the SUSUW Meditation Instructor Certification course. We have you take that one first before the other 40 plus courses. We want you to take the SUSUW course first. So within the first 2 weeks of your degree program, you will have your SUSUW certification and you can start generating money for yourself within the first 2 weeks. So you can be going out generating money while you're studying for the rest of the 21 week or the 42 weeks and so forth. We didn't want you to have to wait 42 weeks before you can start utilizing your degree to make money. You're going to get your certification in the first 2 weeks for meditation instructor certification. You can utilize that credential to start making money. And then as you continue to study, once you complete the 42-week program, or if you do it in 21 weeks or 30 weeks, you will get your diploma, Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, just like any other Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. It will also say Nimdeesem, which is the Akan term for the same, the affairs or issues of knowledge or wisdom and so forth. But then we show you all of the details are here on the page. But we have a list here of all of the different ways you can utilize your degree as an edupreneur, an educational entrepreneur. Definition of edupreneur here. But paid opportunities available with the Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy Nimdeesem degree. As we said, we worked in the field of behavioral health for over a decade and so forth, in the schools as well as with adults and so forth. Therapeutic foster care, so Alcoholics Anonymous groups, Alcoholics Anonymous groups or circles, therapy circles and so forth, group therapy. As we said, they'll bring you out, usually $100 to $300 per session for a small agency. Narcotics Anonymous, same thing. Gamblers Anonymous, same thing. They have group sessions. The therapists say, I think we're going to bring a person to conduct a meditation session this week. see how you all like that. That will be helpful for us and so forth. You have the credential. They already have money set aside. All they need is somebody with a certificate and they can cut your check. Women's shelters, family shelters. They teach things like holistic health, meditation, culture, philosophy, critical to shaping participants' self-worth and confidence. Typically pay speakers, credentialed speakers, $100 to $300 per session. Then critically employer cultural events calendars. We talked about some of this last night. Martin Luther King holiday, employers have, hey, we're going to do some kind of commemoration from MLK Day. Do you know someone who has a degree that can talk about Martin Luther King and his legacy? You can start off talking about it. Once they hire you, you can start off talking about that. But then you can take them into things that are important for our ancestral culture and our origins and our true story and our legacy from ancient Kani and Kemet and everything else. All they need is someone who has some credential, so that satisfies funding sources so they can cut the check. Black History Month events in businesses, corporations, they have some point person. Hey, we want you to head up the committee for Black History Month. We're going to do something. All across the city, the country, there are Black History Months, all history events all month long for employers. All they need is someone who has a credential. You say, hey, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, rooted in African Studies. I can do a 20-minute presentation, 30-minute presentation. I can tailor it based on whatever you want. And they'll say, perfect. Memorial Day, that was created by Black people, called Decoration Day, right after the Civil War, to commemorate our deceased who fought in the war, to end enslavement. We created that day, and now the whites in our spring call it Memorial Day. But more and more people are finding out that Black people established the Memorial Day holiday, and they're having Decoration Day or Memorial Day celebrations and speeches and presentations and events and marketplaces where people are selling their, goods and so forth. It's turning into a much bigger thing. Even in the Washington Post, New York Times, and periodicals like that, they're talking about the Black African-American origin of Memorial Day. So Juneteenth, businesses are having little events. They want someone to come speak. Black August, the entire month of August, dealing with political prisoners and revolutionary, personages and so forth. Just like Black History Month, there are events all across the country for Black August. They need a speaker. You have the credential. Same thing with Kwanzaa and cultural organizations and so forth, a number of different things. If you're into working with youth, schools and after-school programs, weekend programs for youth, summer programs for youth, they always need someone. Can you do a presentation about the origin of the alphabet coming from ancient Kemet, the same alphabet they use? The origin of the numerical system coming from ancient Kemet, that's in our books. You learn that in the degree program. We show you the Medut, the hieroglyphs for that. A number of different things you can use for youth if you like to work with youth. Some people just work with youth alone. They connect with a few organizations and schools, and they once a week, they have one school on Monday, one school on Tuesday, an after-school program on Wednesday, another after-school program on Thursday. They get paid like $200 per session. They make $800 a week, and they work 1 hour a day for 4 days a week. And that's their work schedule for the week, using their Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy degree. African-centered bookstores, businesses, organizations, conferences, cultural events, spiritual events, study groups. Some people just stay in that vein. They go to Black businesses, organizations, when they have events, they say, can you come out to our Kwanzaa event? Can you come out to our Black History event? Can you come out to our, Black August event? Or Friday night, throughout the summer, every Friday, we have an open mic, or we have a different presenter every week. We want somebody to talk about the origin of religion in ancient Kemet, the origin of the term Black coming from ancient Kemet, the origin of the term Afuraka, Africa, coming from Kemet. What is the nature of these deities? Amen, Amenet, Ranrat, African-centered organizations, they want to learn the deeper information. So Black businesses, health food stores, bookstores, organizations, conferences, events, they have things across the country all year long. Some people just work in that realm. and they don't go to the schools and the human services organizations and employers. They just go to Black businesses and Black cultural organizations who have events every month, and they just do it based on that. As long as they know you're grounded because you have that degree, you can do that. And finally, you can host your own events. Spend $50 or $100, rent out a community meeting room at a park district, center. Have some books that you purchase wholesale and you can sell them based on culture, holistic health, true story, and so forth. You can charge people for a meditation session like $5 or something, or $10, or you can take donations. And people usually, if it's donation based, and you say we're going to do meditation SUSUW from an African centered perspective, people are interested in that because they're used to people talking about Hinduism. So they're like, oh, they're doing it from a ancient Afro-Akaini perspective. Let me go to their meditation session. And you can teach them about Ankh, the origin of the term, yoga, Karakasa, origin of nature of the chakra, sacred animal totems utilized during the meditation session, sacred Adinkra symbols, and symbols from ancient Kemet used during the meditation session, totally different than what they get with Hindu practices. You can host your own events. If it's donation-based, usually people will give you a $10 bill or a $20 bill and so forth. Some people give you $5, but it balances out. You have 20 people in there, you make a couple $100. You can sell vegan food or, bottled water or holistic juices and so forth. So once they finish meditating, they can purchase the juice from you. You can generate money like that. So you can host your own events. And since you have, a bachelor's degree in philosophy, Nimdeesem, they'll say, oh, this person has studied the culture. They have information that other people do not have. I want to go to their event, as opposed to someone who spent years studying with some, Hindus or Europeans who studied under some Hindus and are getting misinformation. So with that degree program, 42 weeks or 21 weeks, or you can do it for 30 weeks. It depends on your schedule. And once again, we put the new payment plan option out just the other day, because once again, some people went on the Square platform and what they did was they went on the Square platform, and some people would, they would be approved via Square. If you click the brown button for Square, you could choose at checkout 4 interest-free payments of $150. The entire tuition is $600, but Square will break it up kind of like Shopify into 4 payments of $150. But if you didn't, some people didn't, qualify for that, so they were like, I can't register because I didn't have the $600 up front. I didn't mind paying the $150, but I couldn't register, so Square wouldn't allow me to. They only approved me for $100 or something like that. So we put out the new payment platform just a couple of days ago. Click the green button. It's on PayHip. No credit qualifications necessary. And these are your options. You can pay up front the full amount. You could pay a down payment of $199, which a lot of people choose the $199 option. And then you register and start taking the classes. And next month you come back to the site, pay $199, and the following month you pay $199 and you'll be done. Or you can make a deposit of $149 and do the same thing and pay it off that way. Or you can use the option, you can pay $99 down, you can start your degree program, and then every month around the same date, you make the $99 payment here on the PayHip site until you pay it off. By the time you pay it off, you will have completed your program. You will already have your degree. We will give you the certificate, even if you're doing the $99 a month program and you finish like within 4 months, we're going to give you your certificate so you can utilize it to start generating money. We're not going to hold it until you pay off. We want you to get the diploma so you can start generating money and, do what you need to do. And the same is true, by the way, with the SUSUW course, the Meditation Instructor Certification, if you decided to do the $99 a month, like $99 down and paying $99 a month for 3 months, you're going to finish the course in 4 weeks. It's a 4-week session to get that meditation certification. So in 4 weeks, you pay $99. 4 weeks from now, you'll have your certification. You'll still owe 2 more $99 payments, but we're going to give you the certificate so you can go out and book your first session, so you can start generating the funds, and you can still pay the $99 monthly until you pay it off, over time. But we want you to get the certificate so you can start generating income and impacting our people. All right. Okay, so yeah, so it is self-paced. Hold on one second. Okay, so it is self-paced. So we're kind of doing it by semesters, in the sense of we're starting off in August. This is the first, session. You all will be the first ones to go through the degree program. People have taken the different 42 courses. Like, they may take one course here or there. They may take 2 or 3, or they may have ordered all 9 of the Hoodoo courses that are part of it, and just studying them on their own. But to have the entire degree program and get tested, some people will just order, say, the Aperu course, 4-week course, because they just want to learn about that. So they buy it individually. It's $10. They just want to study that course on their own, and that's it. But when we put together the entire curriculum, all 42, and then you get tested, and we test people weekly and go through the question and answer session and all that, then that's the degree program. And this is the first time we're having the full degree program. And, you all will be the first ones to get that degree and go through all 42 courses and get certified. So we're starting it off as a semester thing, which is August. Enrollment is open now. So you can start off now. The next one will be, probably in after the winter solstice in December, or at some point. We'll probably start it right after the Martin Luther King holiday or something like that. So, but if you want to get in on the original, the first one, if you want to do the $99 down, and it is self-paced. So it's not like, okay, you have to test this week, you have to test, you study it. When you're ready for the test, you study one of the courses, one of the modules, you're ready, then you let us know when you're ready, and then we test. So it is self-paced. Now, it is self-paced, but we're not going to stretch it out. So we don't want people stretching on normally a 42-week session. That is the maximum. The minimum is 21 weeks if you do test 2 courses per week. The maximum is 42. So people can do 1 course per week. Some people can do 2. Some will do 1 course per week, and then some weeks they will do 2, but some weeks they'll do 1, and they'll finish in 30 weeks. Some will finish in 21 weeks. Some will finish in 42 weeks. But we don't want to stretch it out where people are just like, well, I'm going to do 1 course, and then I'll wait 2 or 3 months, and then I'll do the next one, and then it's like 2 or 3 years, and they haven't finished. We want people to be disciplined enough and focused so you can complete it. A 42-week, session. That's a sacred number. There were 42 assessors of Ma'at, 42 divinities. We have a 42-day sacred calendar in Akan. We have 42 administrative divisions in ancient Kemet. So there's a reason why we have the 42 courses in 42 weeks. So we don't want to stretch it out over years where people are just straggling along with it. We want to get the information, incorporate it, and then go out into the community and empower our people, transform our people. Okay. And even if you say you registered today and you wanted to, your first test, maybe you weren't ready to do the first test until the 1st or 2nd week in September. So you wanted to study a little bit longer before you started the testing process. So you didn't want to just, register today, study the first course for the first week and then test next week. So you wanted to enroll today and start your testing on the week of September 14th or something, and then start doing it like that. You can start that way as well. But the registration now is, it's open enrollment right now in August. And once we get to this is the other thing. The reason why we have it like this, if you can imagine, we couldn't have 100 people enroll because I couldn't test 100 people every week. That would be like, there was no way I could do that. I couldn't do like 200 hours of testing per week. We have to have a limited number of people so we can actually test people. So we're limiting the enrollment for this first one to 25 people. So once we reach the 25, mark, then, it'll be closed, because there's no way I'm the only one doing the testing right now. So, I couldn't have 50 or 60 people join and try to test all of those people every week. That would be hundreds of hours. There's no way I could fit that in any kind of schedule. That wouldn't serve the people. First, it wouldn't, logistically, it wouldn't be possible. So it's open now. Once we get to the 25 number, and we'll probably get to that 25 number by sometime early this week coming up, because we had people who were interested, but they were being blocked by Afterpay. So the day before yesterday, when we created the new payment platform, and last night we let people know about it in live last night. So people are just finding out, oh, there's a new option, payment plan option. We should be able to get to the 25 people within the next couple of days. And then we'll go forward. So if you want to get in, please, hit it up now and just, reserve your spot. Okay. Okay, how long did it take you to get a good grasp? Hold on one second. Let me make sure it's okay. So we'll take a few more questions and then we'll be done for tonight. But how long did it take you to get a good grasp of the tree, which is the Akan language, and what steps did you take to learn? Now, I'm not fluent in the tree language, but I understand a lot and so forth. And initially, I wanted to know enough about the language to be able to pray to the Nsamafo and Abosom in the language. That was the first thing, because I don't do English prayers to our ancestresses and ancestors. And I don't want to project this perverse language into our people who are enslaved by English-speaking people. I don't want, they're in the ancestral realm now, and we're going to project the same English language to them. Plus, they don't want to hear that anyway. It's discordant. We want to give them the ancestral language of ancient Kanini Kemet. And since I'm Akan by descent, the Akan language. If you were Yoruba enslaved in North America, learn the language of ancient Kemet, but also the Yoruba language. So getting the dictionary, I had taken a class one time a number of years ago. There was a brother teaching a class in Chicago, and I knew the person, so I did take that class. But I was looking at that time, they had classes where they were recordings, but now you can go online. Now they actually have them. Go on YouTube. They have Learn Akan or Learn to Speak Tree on YouTube, and they have video lessons, and you can go through, you can download the dictionaries and so forth. The other major reason I was studying was to learn how to pray in the language, to utilize that in ritual. And also my Nsamafo directed me to compare the language of the Akan people with the language of ancient Kemet. So that 600 plus page Akan dictionary showed that was published in the 1800s. And then the 2-volume set hieroglyphic dictionary, we started comparing back in the 90s. It was my Nsamafo who showed me that the Akan people came from ancient Khanid Nubia, and some migrated to Kemet and some stayed in Khanid Nubia before migrating west to reestablish Akan Empire in the western part of the continent. In the 90s, I'd never heard anything like that before. I thought the Akan people were just, in the western part of the continent, and ancient Kemet and Khanid was, ancient times. But they shared that. And then through study and language, and eventually the human genome was mapped in the so-called 2000s, proving the genetic connection. We already proved the linguistic connection We have the same deities with the same names and everything else. So we were able to prove it through anthropological sources. But that was the other reason I wanted to study the language, to pray first, but also to show and prove conclusively that the Akan language is directly descendant of ancient Ghanaian Kemet. 2 of the courses in the philosophy program is Medut Ntoro Volume 1 and Part 2. Let me show you what that is right quick. So 2 of the courses you will be studying are these. Medut Ntoro Divine Inscription, Parts 1 and 2. It's learning how to read and write the language of the Medut Ntoro, which is the divine words or symbols, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet. So you have a working knowledge of how to read and write that. And we show the comparisons between that language and the languages of contemporary Afuraka Africa in that 2-part course as well. So one of the 42 weeks you'll be testing on Part 1, one of the 42 weeks you'll be testing on Part 2. And that is very important because when you go to, do a presentation at a school or at a place of business or Black History Month event at a corporation, you don't have to get super deep when you go into a corporation because they would get scared of that anyway. But you can show images of jet Black people in Nubian Kemet holding styluses and writing and showing that the alphabet that we use today and the numerical system that we use today, 0, 1 through 9, and so forth, came directly from our Black ancestresses and ancestors of ancient Kemet. That in and of itself blows people away. And they're like, wow, all the Black people who work at this corporation will walk away empowered. If you go to a school, the children are empowered because they're like, every time I write something, I'm doing something that came from my great, 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 great grandparents. We created these numbers, we created these letters, and so forth. This is our stuff. We created math and science. Everything I learned in school was established by our people. So they're more empowered in school. They don't see it as this is something that's being forced on us, that the white man's quote unquote science, when they see algebra and geometry and trigonometry and so forth, they're like, oh, these are our sciences by our people. And we show ancient papyri with the area of a triangle in the papyri and so forth, the mathematical papyri, the Ames papyri, the medical papyri, all these different things. So, but you can go online. It's much easier now to go online, get online courses. Many of them are free. You can download free dictionaries and so forth. Kasahoro is one of them. Kasa. In fact, let me see. Kasahoro, it started off as dealing just with the Akan language, but now they have multiple languages from the continent. They have free online dictionaries from these various languages. They have English, for example, English to Akan, Akan to English. So you type in the Akan word, they'll show you what it is in English. You type in the English word, they'll show you what it is in Akan and so forth. Free resource. Go on YouTube, you can get that. Same thing with the other languages as well. And by the way, so people asked about the book. So when you go, I'll place this in the chat room. This is our Nhoma page. It's talking about the newest book right there, but Nhoma means book or publication in Akan. So on this page, you'll see the front covers of all of the 31 books. When you click on the front cover, it will either open up the book right away, or it'll take you to a page for the book, and then you can open up the book from there. So for example, Afuraka, the origin of the term Africa. It'll take you to the Afuraka page. And when you click on the cover, it will open up the book. Hold on a second. If you look, for example, the Coco Bo book, we were talking about dissexuality, homosexuality. When you click on that page, actually now this book is incorporated in the new anthology. And let me show you that real quick. But all of the other books, when you click on them, like the Yonkopon and Yonkotone book, opens it up. We're showing that Ra and Rayat, the creator and creatress, in H. Kemet, are the deities in Yonkopon and in Yonkotone in the Akan language. We have the Akrade and Boson book, the deities of the 7 days of the week and all that. But we have the Ankwamua Whole Life Journal. All these books are part of the philosophy course. Some of them are part of the SUSUW course. This is part of the SUSUW course as well. So there's information about holistic health, symbolism, trustery, culture from a very introductory perspective. Deal with holistic health, for example. Those foods that are in the same shape of the organs and systems are good for those organs and systems. That's an ancient principle. So when you see a walnut, for example, with the 2 hemispheres like the brain, it turns out walnuts are good brain food. They have omega 3 and 6 fatty acids that are for the neurons and everything. So those are things you can teach your youth as well as adults in an introductory fashion that, you know, really transforms them and shocks them into wanting to study more about the culture. But the Unhoma page on the website is where you can get all of the 31 books, download them for free, except for recently the 12 of those books are the anthology. The 600-page book are these 12 books all together in one volume, revised and expanded this year, put in one volume and so forth. So that's what you will be receiving. When you go on this page, you can order the book. And the thing about the book is we, on Amazon, and let me put this, on Amazon, it's more expensive just because Amazon takes 60% off the top for all booksellers. So for example, if you wrote a book and you were selling it for $10 and you put it on Amazon, Amazon is going to take 60% off the top. So they're going to take $6 and you're going to get $4. And then they're also going to charge you for printing. So you'll probably get like $3 and so forth. So you'll notice that people who have books, they cost a little bit more on Amazon, especially if they're in color like mine. They charge you much more per book for color. And we had to print it in color so you could see these deities and temples and so forth. But you can get it for a 30% discount if you order it directly from our website, like one of the questions were. So it's $44 on the website. It's $59.95. It's 600 pages, but it's $59.95 on Amazon. But on our website directly is $44. And that is the trailer for it. And you'll see when you click on the Square, you know, the payment platform for that, Square does have even a payment plan option for that. You can break it up into 4 payments. So it's $44 plus $8 shipping, which is $52. And when you go to checkout, you can choose the option of 4 interest-free payments of $13. So you can do that if you want to. When you order directly from the Unhoma page on the website, that's the link right there. Okay, so we're gonna, let me see if there's any other comments before we, okay, one person was asking about the mentally ill person that has been stalking me for the past 7 years. She is, of course, as we said, there was a hearing 2 days ago. She was determined not competent to stand trial, so she's still being held at the psychiatric hospital. There's another hearing in September and so forth. You said, dang, she took it to the Supreme Court. She actually did that twice. I'm pretty sure she's trying to do it again. Of course, they're going to deny. They're not going to even hear that case. They're going to affirm the, decision of the lower court by just rejecting the case. Is this a part of your soul contract? Was the lesson in all this? So no. We had no soul contract. We have no connection. Sometimes people use the term soul contract and they give different definitions. Some of us have been part of the same clan in previous lifetimes. Like if we were living on the continent, we were part of the same clan. We were enslaved, forced over here. Our descendants were enslaved, but then they freed themselves, and then we reincarnated through our descendants. And we're back in the world once again, and we're part of the same ancient clan, and we come in contact with one another. We're drawn to one another. And in that context, it's a real soul connection. We are not that. She's just someone who has a parasitic, disposition and trying to attach herself. Like parasites need a host to survive. So they attach themselves to a host, even though the host doesn't want them attached. But a leech will latch on to an animal, suck the blood out of the animal. If you don't remove the leech, it'll end up killing you and so forth. So it's a parasitic kind of thing. But it's very important. I spent over a decade in the field of behavioral health. At the same time, I'm involved, of course, in Ancestral Religion, been teaching that and doing divination for people, doing spiritual readings and so forth. We talked about that last night. So I know how to navigate my way through this, where some people would have been, overwhelmed by her flooding the court system. We have to, working in the field of behavioral health, we have to be in the court system with our clients, whether they were youth or adults. We're before the judges on a regular basis, working with the assistant attorney generals and the other attorneys and so forth, filing these, briefs and everything. I'm familiar with all of that, as well as what's going on the conventional side, mental health wise, and the underlying shaping factors spiritually. So I can show people how to navigate their way through this kind of situation. It's been going on for 7 years. A lot of it is going to come to a close soon, because they will be locking her away. Like when they put her in jail the first time, they gave her 10 days. Out of a 180-day sentence, they gave her 10 days. The rest was probation. She got out in 10 days and violated immediately. So she was back in court. They were going to give her 6 months in jail, but then she failed the competency test and they transferred her to the mental health place. They gave her the full, actually 7 months. She started kind of moderating her behavior so she could get out, and they let her out before the year was up. She immediately violated, and then she violated multiple times, and there are multiple criminal charges now. So if she was to go to regular prison, it'll be at least 2 years. But if she's not competent, this time she'll go back to the psychiatric hospital in a civil commitment instead of a criminal commitment, under a civil commitment. And they will give her at least 2 years, and she'll be away for at least a couple of years. So when I would sit in court, I've been before a judge at least over 25 times, whether it's virtual or down at the courthouse. And there were many other times in addition to that, well, I would get to the courthouse, we're about to go in, and then she would throw some Hail Mary and get a continuance. Like the time when she reached out to a human trafficking rights victims organization and obtained their pro bono attorney who helps victims of human trafficking and so forth. She's been lying about being human trafficked for 40 years and freed herself through the power of hoodoo, which is pure stupidity. But she's been lying about that and writing about it and everything else, and writing little fake ebooks about it and creating GoFundMe accounts to, support her as a victim of human trafficking. Pure fabrication. But she got one of these attorneys to come down to court and try to represent her in court until the attorney spoke with me and I laid down everything that was happening. And then the attorney was like, told the judge, okay, we're not going to be taking this case. Only problem with that is she took a whole half of a day from an attorney who does pro bono work with human rights or human trafficking victims. She stole that attorney from a real human trafficking victim to try to pretend like she needed assistance, all because she's trying to get out of going to jail. So she's lying to the judge, saying the only reason she came to my house because she was trying to escape from her human traffickers who were trafficking her for 40 years in slavery. Pure stupidity, but she's stealing real resources from people who needed it. We don't have an infinite number of pro bono attorneys, and this was a Black woman attorney who's out here fighting for, human trafficking victims. She stole her away to try to play this little game. So, but she was able to get a continuance and force the court to push the, hearing to the following month. Then the next month she did something else and pushed it to the following month. So I've been to court multiple times waiting to go to court just to be told it's not going to happen today. We spent a few hours in the courthouse waiting outside the courtroom and like, okay, it's not going to happen today. She did another machination. But at some point, one of the judges put a stop to it, but it took months before that happened. But I can show people how to navigate their way through it. When I would be sitting, as the cases are called, when you're sitting in court and they call everybody else's cases before yours, you see all the horror stories about what's happening, mainly with women. Sometimes, every now and then, it's a male being stalked. Usually it's a woman being stalked by another male, sometimes another woman, but very often a male. And I'm seeing what these people are going through. And me putting this out and putting the whole 13-part series out, and people can check it out, it can give them pointers on how to navigate their way through the court system on the civil side and the criminal side. How to get to, result much quicker. If someone is avoiding being served their summons, which she was doing, she was hiding, and we weren't able to serve her the summons. And if you can't serve her the summons, then she doesn't have to come to court. And she's just out here homeless, popping up at my house and disappearing before we can find out where she's at. So, but if you file a motion for alternative service and show you made a diligent effort and she's evading service, then the judge will take note of it, see if you meet the requirements, and then she'll say, okay, well, if she's hiding, you can just email her the summons and send it by text. And that's what we did. And now she's compelled to come to court. She can't hide anymore because we sent the email, and if she doesn't show up at court, a bench warrant will be issued for her arrest. So things like that, some people would just give up. If they couldn't serve the person the summons, if the guy who was harassing them and showing up at their job and stuff like that, if he's hiding and they couldn't serve the summons and months have gone by, they'll just give up and say, I couldn't serve him the summons and I'm gonna have to close the case. And as soon as the case is closed, the person pops up back at their house. So, and then they have to start all over again, file a new petition and go to the judge and get a temporary restraining order, and then try to serve them and go to court and tell the judge whether or not they could serve them. That's what was happening with me at first. I had to learn that, but now I can share with other people. I got the temporary restraining order for 14 days. I had 14 days to serve her. She was hiding. She was disappearing. She was in a homeless shelter. She told the people at the front to say that she's not there, or we don't know who this person is. Had to police go there on 3 different occasions. They got different stories every time they went. Once I had to dismiss the case, after going with the police a number of times and going before the judge a couple of times, and the judge was like, we can't keep giving you a continuance. If you can't serve her, we're gonna have to close the case. I had the case closed. The day after I had the case closed, I came home, opened my front door, and there was a packet envelope on my carpet. And of course, I opened it up, and it was from her. And she did a printout of the entire court docket. Every time I went to court, the date, the time, what happened, and so forth, including the day that the case was dismissed. And as soon as it was dismissed, she popped up at my house again, got inside my building, slid, and it's a locked building, got inside the building, slid the thing under the door, talking her nonsense again, and then disappeared before I can find out where she's at. She's homeless, so it's hard to find. But eventually I got the motion for alternative service, was able to serve her electronically, and then she was compelled to come to court and she couldn't hide anymore. She was forced to show up and face the judge. So things like that, we can help smooth the way. Because of what I've gone through these past 7 years, I can help other people because I know how to navigate it, and I've been going back and forth to court and filing all these briefs in the civil case as well as the criminal case and so forth, doing the research, answering her 100+ pages complaints, all of that. But it can help other people, so that's what's what. Okay. Okay. So what has she been diagnosed with? I was actually in the courtroom when the head of psychology at this particular behavioral health hospital, psychiatric hospital, mentioned what her diagnosis is. But in this context, if I was to mention her diagnosis publicly, that would be a violation of a HIPAA law because she didn't repeat it publicly. So while I do know what it is, I couldn't say, because she would just file another, she watches everything I have whenever she can get her hands on it. She's looking for a way she incorporates different things I say in these 100+ page documents, even though they always fall to the wayside, but she would still file another complaint anyway, just to try to get something going. So I do know what the diagnosis is, but I can't say, but you can probably surmise it's not borderline personality disorder. At least that's not the one that it was before, but it is one of the most extreme. I'll just say that. There are many extreme ones, but it's one of the most extreme. All right. You definitely should make it a movie. So crazy. Actually, the reason why I did the 13-part series back last year, if you recall that the sister, her name is Risa Tisa, and she did that 50-part series, Why the F or Who the F Did I Marry? And she did it in February. And it just so happened I ended up watching the whole 50-part series. And now she has a deal with like BET or something. They're going to make the movie out of it. But she did it in February over the Valentine's Day weekend, and people were watching the series, and she got like 400 million views. It just so happened that when I was watching that whole thing and I finished the whole 50-part series, we had a court date. It was like February 20th at the same time that I was watching that series. And something happened at the court date, and then they pushed it back to the next month for a status hearing. And I was like, you know what? I need to talk about what's happening with this. Just like this sister shed light on how a mentally ill individual could cause all kinds of havoc and how to navigate that and so forth, and how to see the signs. My story is very similar to hers, except going all through all these different court sessions and, civil court, criminal court, and everything else. So when I did mine, she just told her story, and she did it in a brilliant way. She just, spoke. I did the same thing, but I showed all of the court orders in the video, so I can't be accused of defaming. Everything is factual. And I wanted people to see that I'm not just making this up. This is literally what happens. And many of the stories that are told by this individual, if I did not show the court orders, like about the decapitation and the impersonator and all that, people would think I was making it up. So I had to show the court orders, and all of these stories and stuff are in the court filings. Nothing is just word of mouth. So, yes. Okay. Is the judicial system that is practiced by the spirits of disorder a ripoff of ancient African system or a corruption of my? In a way, it is, because even the blind lady holding the scales of justice and so forth, the scales of Libra. That is Ma'at on her scales of justice and balance and all of that. So they took different ideas and, incorporated some of them. But of course, you can have different structures, but the key is, are you moral? It doesn't matter what structure they use, even if they imitated, they use the exact same structure as us. Since they are immoral, they're going to flout the rules anyway. So yes, they took different elements of our governmental structures and systems of jurisprudence and created their own system. The Greeks did that, the Romans did that after them, and so forth. They learned about that from ancient Khanid and Kemet. They took fragments of it and created their own thing, corrupted fragments. But yes, it's still rooted in immorality. Okay, so we're almost at 3 hours. I really only wanted to do like an hour and a half tonight. If you have any other questions, of course, you can email us. But so there are 3 things that are going on. Let me put this back in the chat room right quick. Okay, so the 3 things that are happening, that we touched on. First, the fundraising piece for the film. And again, we want to get the film done as for October for the Hoodoo Festival, the 11th annual. So we're going to be filming at the end of this month, some more filming. We have to get we film in 4K like we did the other 2 films, our 2 films for those who came on a little bit later. If you look on our YouTube channel here, you will see the AMARUKAFO ADEBISA, African American Ancestral Divination. We did that a number of years ago. And then 2 years ago in October, we released the first Hoodoo film, which is part of a trilogy, Hoodoo, Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. You can watch both of those films on this channel. We're working on part 2, and this is going to deal with Hoodoo ritual, part 2 of the Hoodoo film trilogy. We did some of the filming. We filmed in 4K. We did the stuff that we can do in 4K with the camera we have. We needed an additional camera for certain angles and so forth. And with regard to the post-production, which people know in film, the post is critical. We're going to have to use a different computer for that, because the one we have, which is a good model, we've been using this for the past few years to, with our films and so forth. But the 4K video and so forth is causing the computer to become hot, to run hot and so forth, and we have to cool it down. It does have the fans, the internal fans, but they're not enough. So, and it's a little bit slower and so forth, so we need a little bit higher power for the post-production. So the cameras and the additional camera and the post-production computer, we need that to continue. So that's why we were saying we have to raise 15K, but if we can raise 5K this month so we get the additional camera and the laptop for the post-production, we can do that now and finish the rest of the filming by the end of August into September. Then we can get the next third of the funding in September throughout the month. And then the final third at the end of September, beginning of October, we can finish the film and release it for the pre-screening for those of you who contributed, whether you come, as we said, in person to the Hoodoo Mind Festival, Hoodoo Nation Festival, and watch the screening in person, or you'll have the private link and we'll live stream it on the private link. So wherever you are, if you contributed to our film and assisted us, then you get the pre-screening, and then you have access to some other, things that, we can give to you as well for making a contribution. Yet I say we thank you to those who contributed last night when we were on live. They contributed while we were, doing the presentation last night. And then a couple of people this morning contributed. So yet I say to those of you who contributed, we appreciate that. You can contribute now for that. That's one thing. And then also the SUSUW course, Meditation Instructor Certification, 4-week course, begins Tuesday. That's the final one for this summer. It's August 19th through September 9th to be certified. So if you would like to join that one, you can join that one through the SUSUW piece. It starts Tuesday night. And then, of course, the Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. That enrollment is open now. Once we hit our mark of 25 people, which we hope to do that within the next couple of days. Then we'll be closing registration for that. So we can go forward with that. Okay, one last question. As Africans born in America, how do we find our blood ancestors and current relatives in Africa without using modern DNA tests? For example, how did you know you're Akan even though you're American? So it's two different ways. Well, three ways. The original way, well, not original, but the way that that became popular in America, you have people who are very astute genealogists, and they know how to dig in these records and find these records. Sometimes churches like the Mormon Church has a lot of records because they were keeping records that were handed over by people who were enslaved Black people. There are certain churches that have records because they were enslaving people and baptizing people, and they happen to have records of enslaved people going back to the 1800s and earlier. Then people kept things in their family Bibles, or then their slave records from slave, quote unquote, slave holders and so forth. You go on Ancestry.com. There's a lot of information out there now where you can see actual, documents of when your great-grandparent who was in World War I signed his name on the, when he's, got registered for the selective service and so forth and joined the army and so forth. When people were taking the census, in the early 1800s, and they were writing down the names of your grandparents and so forth, I was able to see actual slave rolls, quote unquote slave rolls from the early 1800s in Alabama, for example, the name of my great grandfather, how old he was, my great grandmother who were on the plantation like in 1820. We were able to trace the names back, and then we found the actual record when their names were written on there. So it's a lot more information out there now than it has been because of the internet and because of certain records being released and so forth, shipping records and all kinds of things. So genealogists do a great deal of work, and they've been doing that. Then the next piece is the ones who started it off was AfricanAncestry.com, owned by the Black geneticist, Dr. Rick Kittles and so forth, based in Howard University, Washington, D.C. They have the largest sample of DNA from across the continent. And they have the mitochondrial line and the Y chromosomal line from the Patriclan and the Matriclan and so forth. So I did that one as well as the ancestry DNA, but you can do that and you can get a picture of, for example, your mother and her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother going straight back. That's the mitochondrial DNA line. And then the Y chromosomal Patriclan kit, father and his father, his father and his father and his father going straight back. Now, you look at your father and his father and his father. Now, his father's wife, her DNA is not going to be captured on the Patriclan line. You would have to get somebody from her direct descent and have them take the test to find out her. And you can do that. You can take your Patriclan line, your Matriclan line, and if there's somebody, say your mother and her mother and her mother and her mother, your great, 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 great grandmother, it'll say, well, she's directly descended from the Basa people in Liberia. She has their DNA. So, Matriclan wise, you have directly descent DNA from the Basa people in Liberia. But if she married an Akan person, his DNA wouldn't show up on that line. But his descendants and his relatives, you can have one of them take a test from him and find out what his descent is. And you can get multiple tests within the family and everybody's line will be picked up. So when they say, oh, the DNA tests are fake and they only give you a part, DNA is not, DNA is DNA. Just like when someone gets a DNA test to find out if this is your child or not, they don't see it as fake then, but when it comes to finding out that we are Afro-Akani people, self-hating individuals want to pretend like we're not African and we're Native Americans or Asians, or some fools will say we're extraterrestrials. They want to try to deny that we are Afro-Akani people because it's self-hatred at the end of the day. So when DNA tests came to prove that we're not some fictional cartoon character Hebrews, we're not Asiatic, the Asiatic black man and so forth, we're not quote unquote Native Americans and descendant from the Native Americans. We're descended from West and Central and South and some East, a few North Afro-Akani people over the past 500 plus years. And our DNA proves that. So you can do it that way with DNA, but when I first found out, it was through our ancestral shrine. I didn't know anything about Akan people back in the 90s, nothing at all. So when they told me that at the ancestral shrine, they also directed me to start looking into who the Akan people are. I knew about the Yoruba people because it was popular in the 90s to talk about the Orisha and so forth. So I knew about them, but I had absolutely no knowledge whatsoever about Akan people. When I started studying that and learning about it, then they started proving to me that that's my ancestry. That's 90s. Just a few years back when I took the DNA test from African Ancestry, as well as the Ancestry DNA, and then you can take your Ancestry test, and there are certain other testing sites that will take your raw material and show you a admixture test because they've taken samples from more African groups. Ancestry doesn't have as many samples from various groups on the continent. They have thousands of them, but not enough. So they give you more of a general picture. And the more you'll notice Ancestry DNA, the more people that they incorporate, the more samples that they get, you'll see your percentages change. So if last year they said you have 40% from the Congo, and then this year they'll say you had 20% from the Congo and 20% from Namibia, that's because they got more DNA from Namibia and realized that yours is more nuanced. So theirs will give you a general picture because they have less samples, but they will give you a general picture. But you can take that raw material and put it into your DNAportal.com, for example, and theirs is much more specific. So, for example, they showed that, when I had the ancestry, it said a plurality of Akan DNA from Ghana and Ivory Coast. Like the highest percentage was that, like 26+%, and then I had other percentages. Your portal DNA, they'll break it down to great-great-grandparents and then grandparents, or great-great-grandparents and great-grandparents and grandparents and so forth. And they'll break it up into, the 4 grandparents and 25% of each. And again, I had that 25% Akan, specifically Akan, whereas Ancestry DNA, at the time, they didn't have as much, so they just said Ghana and Ivory Coast. They didn't have to break down specifically. Now they're getting more people on board, and they'll say, well, yours is specifically Akan within Ghana and Ivory Coast. But at first, years ago, it just said Ghana, Ivory Coast, but I knew what they were talking about. But your portal DNA is very specific, so they'll show you, specific ethnic groups. And once again, you had this large percentage of Akan, which verified a number of things, and so forth. So DNA just confirmed what I already knew. But when they speak to you in the Akan language, and I didn't know anything about tree language, and I had to study the tree language to find out what they were saying in the tree language at my shrine, that was when the first proof came. I heard them speaking a language I didn't know. They told me they're Akan. They told me that the Akan people come from ancient Khanit, Nubia, and Kemet, but primarily from ancient Nubia, and some went into Kemet, but many stayed in ancient Khanit or Nubia. I started studying that. I started studying the Akan language. They told me that the Akan people in the language of ancient Kemet is the same language and descendant. I started comparing the dictionaries to confirm what they told me. So anything they told me spiritually, I was able to confirm it tangibly. I don't want to get in front of people and say, well, the spirits told me something, so you need to believe it. I will never do that. If I tell you the spirits shared something, I'm going to tell you I went and physically and tangibly confirmed exactly what they said spiritually. And you do the same thing with your people. If you get a message from the Odumafo, Abosom, and so forth, they're going to show you ways to confirm it physically, so you have absolute physical proof of what they're saying. So them speaking to me in the tree language at my ancestral shrine where I could hear them audibly, and then I had to go prove it and study for myself and start finding the things that they were talking about. They directed me, for example, to establish the Ojira celebration, the New Year observance in September. Then I find out specifically that it's specifically the Akwamu ethnic group within the larger Akan, ethnic group who established Ojira. All Akan people don't celebrate Ojira. Some do, some celebrate Adai Kesie like the Asante, but it's the Akwamu Akan people who established the Ojira celebration as the new year. My people told me to reestablish the Ojira celebration as the new year. After years of doing that, I found out that the Akwamu people, who they told me I'm Akwamu, they're the ones specifically out of all the other Akan groups, they're the one Akan group who created the Ojira celebration as the new year. And a number of other things that only Akwamu people do that they told me to do, and then I found out, oh, Akwamu people do this. So, but they'll give you the information spiritually and you can confirm it physically. I confirmed it through language, through comparative linguistics, through culture, the names of the deities in ancient Kemet, the names of the deities in Akan, which nobody had done that research before. So we're the first to do that and we can prove it. That's why we wrote these books. And then the DNA came later, like 20 plus years later, the DNA simply confirmed what I already knew. All right. Okay, so Yedase, we thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to your contributions to the film project so we can get this film out to you. We look forward to connecting with you all Tuesday. Those of you who are going to be taking the meditation certification course, look forward to connecting with you and going through the classes with you. And those who are signing up for the philosophy degree in philosophy, we look forward to connecting with you as well. Okay, so, all right, so yeah, I say we thank you for tuning in, and Yabesha Bio, we will meet again. That's it.
SUSUW, Meditation Instructor Certification. SUSUW is the ancient Akan term for meditation. SUSUW originated in our ancestral culture of Afuraka, Afurayat, Africa, tens of thousands of years ago. This ancient practice has been utilized to regulate physical, emotional, and mental balance for millennia in varied expressions wherever our people have migrated in the world. The scientific benefits of meditation for youth and adults have been well documented, enhancing learning outcomes, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety and depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles to short and long-term goals. Our meditation instructor certification is for individuals, independent contractors, educators, homeschoolers, human services professionals, behavioral health professionals, and others. As a certified instructor, you are qualified to contract with independent schools, charter schools, cultural organizations, corporate entities, women's and family shelters, community centers, colleges, and more to conduct meditation sessions on a daily, weekly, or periodic basis. Our instruction is rooted in our Nkwamua whole life wellness model.
Chiamo, that means greetings. I just wanted to give a quick update. You'll get the details in the clip that follows. I just wanted to show everyone. So my soft cover book, Odwirafo True Historical Anthology, is now available. It's live on Amazon, but we also have a 30% discount when you order directly through our website. As we said before, in some of the postings and information we sent out, Amazon takes 60% off the top for booksellers on their distribution site and so forth. So we can offer it at a 30% discount, on our website. So you'll get the information in the clip that follows, but 8.5 by 11 size, 600 pages, full color, and we go into detail about various aspects of Akan African Ancestral Religion, culture, nation building, true historical information, spirituality, cosmology, and every facet of African Black identity, and so forth. So check out the clip that follows. We look forward to connecting with you, and Yerase, we thank you for your support.
Odwirafo True Historical Anthology. This is a collection of 12 books in one volume written by Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehmpata Akan. This 600-page anthology is comprised of 12 books within the 31-book corpus published by Odwirafo, which focus on true story, cosmology, ritual, identity, and nation-building restoration for Afurikani, Afurite people, African Black people, wherever we exist in the world. Included within this anthology is the origin of the fictional characters Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, and more. The etymology of the term God in the language of ancient Kemet, quote-unquote, Egypt. Origin of the term Afuraka, Afurikayat, Africa in Kemet. Etymology and cosmology of religion and spirit in Kemet. Ankh and Kara, the origin of the terms yoga and chakra in Kemet. Afurakani, Afurite Kaitnit, African Black origin of civilization. Divine order in Afurakani, Afurite Kaitnit, African cosmology. Ritual in Afurakani, Afurite Kaitnit, African Ancestral Religion. Nature of the soul as divine consciousness in Akan cosmology. More means dead. Male-female complementary balance in ancestral religion. Ancestresses, ancestors, goddesses, gods, biology, geology. Racial exclusivity in ancestral religion. Spirigenetic inheritance. Divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality in Kemet. Black nation building, restoration, rooted in ancestral religion, and more. This anthology was curated to function as a volume that will positively transform the mind of any Afurakani, Afurite Kaitnit, African Black individual, youth, or adult who receives it. We examine every facet of Afurakani, Afurite Kaitnit, African identity, empowering readers to transform their minds and thus transform their condition wherever they exist in the world. Special 30% discount for our subscribers and followers. See our website to order now. Yerase.